All right, go. Okay, the P200 has a fantastic Sony image module. It gives you 30 times zoom, great for any size room. It's great in low light and has awesome color rendition. On top of that, we have our BirdDog NDI processing engine, which gives you the highest quality pictures at the lowest latency. It's compatible with any NDI device on the planet and just gives you the best outputs. We have our brand new user interface with NDI version 5, which gives you waveforms and vector scopes to make sure you're properly exposed. It also gives you unlimited control as far as color control and using your camera. In addition to this, it sounds strange, but we can do pan, tilt and zoom at the same time. Try some other cameras, they can't all do it. The P200 is a fantastic camera that's got every type of connection you can want, from NDI with power over Ethernet, SDI, HDMI, any control interface. It's got a great big tally on the top. It's a really great camera. How to do with the time? And the cool thing is, for a limited time, if you buy 3 P200s, you get a free PTZ controller.
Well, it is that time again, everybody. Hope you are doing well. My name is BirdDog John, and I am back in action.
In those scenarios, it's good to neuralize the cameras. You guys know that best.
Very straightforward. Plug it in, go to the web UI, link the source, walk away. You know, like super simple. I keep looking over at the chat, and I keep seeing you are full of it. Tasty, spicy meat snacks. Covered in flavor. I mean, you can't go wrong. So what's going on? We've got a handful of folks here in the chat, and I really appreciate that. What's up, mate? Hey, Warren, how are you? Appreciate it. Hey, Robbie, how's it going, man? You're just talking about you. What's going on, Tom? Ahoy. How is it going? What's going on, GoWeb? Good to see you again. Thanks for hanging out with us again today. Appreciate that. Feel like I'm in this video more than anyone but John. It's true, NetApp. You are, I'm going to cut this up and put this in the next intro. Yep. It is that time again. Hopefully you guys are all doing well. I am BirdDog John. Hopefully this show finds you near the end of the week, right? It's Thursday. Near the end of the week. Yeah, looking forward to the weekend. We're getting into the holiday season, so that's pretty exciting stuff. But welcome to the show. We've got a lot going on here, and so I'm excited to kind of get on with today's show, to be honest with you, because it's been kind of a whirlwind getting ready for that, and we definitely need to get this one underway. Today, as you have seen, the topic is about NDI and networked audio, and so we're going to try and touch on some of these items as best we possibly can, given the amount of exposure and experience we have so far. I can speak more directly to some of the NDI stuff. Matter of fact, I can give you some examples as to how we're doing that here in the show. And we're also going to spend some time talking about Dante, because that is also a thing. And so I have lined up snacks on stream. Today we are going to just have a 10-gram protein Gatorade Zero Glacier Freeze, brought to you by Balu. But in the mail this week, I have received a couple of 2-channel AVIO interfaces. I've got one of them online right now, and then we can unbox this one as well if you've never seen them. They run just north of $200 each, and so that's a bit of a doozy if you're looking to just get into things, into the Dante world. But, you know, sometimes we've been threatening to get into it, for, I don't know, quite a while, and we launched Dante Bridge to bring NDI signals, to convert them over to Dante signals or Dante over to NDI signals. And so I can show you a little bit about those apps as well. The thing about Dante Bridge is that it requires Dante controller, and so if you don't have a free account with Dante, I believe you have to sign up for one and give away all your information so that you can download their software. So I got the latest versions of everything today and been kind of working through that here this morning among a few meetings that have started. It's only 11 o'clock. I feel like I've done a whole lot of stuff here. And we're only like 2 hours in. So I probably could have benefited from coming to the office early. But, some things just it's not in the cards. So we'll go down that road. Now, super excited that the legend, I found out because I had watched his reviews back in the day. Anthony Burokas has volunteered to join me today on the stream among his very busy schedule, and so busy that we haven't even had a chance to connect today. So there's like, I guess, construction and stuff going on at his place, and he's trying to like manage that and also do this for me, and so we'll bring him on when he's a little bit ready a little bit later. But he's got some good experience and has reviewed a lot of stuff. If you look him up on YouTube, he's done a fair number of reviews for various YouTube channels, actually, for that matter. And we'll get to know him a little bit better. But he's particularly done reviews for Bird Dog products and has been quite generous with his reviews. Those were just things that I think we sent him and said, review it for us. I specifically remember because Eamon had me send him one a while ago, and then I forget what, I think it was a camera, but anyways, I can't remember what it was, but a while ago we shipped him something, and he was able to throw something up on YouTube to review it, and was very, very kind in his review. So today we're going to get a chance to hang out with him a little bit, and he's got some exposure. He's done a fair bit of audio mixing, and he's got a couple of videos on even just straight up audio, so it'll be good to have his voice on this show in a little bit when he's available. Let's go through the chat, see who's here. So Jeremy, good to see you. And I know Jeremy's got quite a wealth of knowledge when it comes to this sort of stuff too. So it's good to have you in the chat, man. And hopefully you can jump in and help me out here with some of these. It's going to be a learning curve for me too. Full disclosure, I literally just got non-Bird Dog Dante devices in the office yesterday. So, and I pitched the case last week to the bosses and was like, look, we're going to need to support this. So I'm going to need some sources in this office that we can see them running parallel with the NDI 5 profile on the 4250s. So here we go. We're going to start testing that where we have actual interfaces in the office and they show up in Dante controller, which is very little to do in terms of getting that to work. A little more work with the Dante Bridge stuff, but I'll talk a little bit more about that maybe later. Greetings from India. What's going on? Mr. Shyam Gupta. Hopefully I'm not butchering that too badly, but thanks for jumping on the show. I really appreciate that. Thanks for checking in on LinkedIn. MEM, hello. How are you doing? Good to see you. I recognize your logo there, so that's all good. I know you're back for more. Didn't scare you away. That always amazes me that people are not getting scared off of this show. So, Alex, Paraguay, I know I recognize you right away. Greetings. How are you? GoWeb. This is one of your ideas, man. This if it flies or fails, we're gonna remember. No, I'm kidding. GoWeb was the requester for discussing audio, and so hey, if you've got questions here now, you're gonna have me and Anthony to chat about that. So we'll cover that in a few minutes. Hey, thanks for the topic pick there, GoWeb. Yes, and I agree. Jeremy and I are in lockstep about that. GoWeb's always got a lot of good ideas for topics for the show, so that's really nice. Dark Acid, wow, it has been a minute since I have seen you. How are you? Thanks for coming back, and hopefully you're doing well. Ross, over in Scotland, are you? Here we are again. Got snacks to hand. Yeah, so I had a chat with my guy over in the UK, and he's like, oh, so if you're going to have snacks from Scotland, we got to get you some stuff from Britain. So maybe we're going to get some stuff over from the UK. Time will tell if things show up. Ooh, over in Morocco. That's exciting. Hey, Bird Dog John, will you be going over virtual Dante cards as well via or the other one? We can certainly go down that road. I'm full disclosure, I'm not super knowledgeable with the Dante stuff, but yeah, we can definitely chat about it. That's all good. What's going on, Brayden? Good morning. Yeah, thanks for approving. And the circle goes around. Angus, morning. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Yeah, trial by fire. That's the story of this show. That has definitely been what I've been up to. Oh, that's me, the same guy. Hey, what's going on? GoWeb is much easier than me butchering your name. Morning, CJ. Oh, CJ is a good reference to have on this audio show, so be good to have him around. Facebook user. Unfortunately, Facebook doesn't actually bring the information in as to who is posting this, but good morning to whoever that is. Hopefully you're well. Thanks for hanging out with us today. How could you send it back to comms? Well, we can go down that road in a minute. We'll see. Oh, the days that I have to run Dante with NDI. Yes. Maybe is that why you're here? Is that why you joined us for this show? Jump in and let me know, by the way, because I could definitely use your insight. A while ago, we talked about using Dante Bridge to bridge the BirdDog comms to a Dante network. Getting the audio out seems easy enough since one can see the individual comms channels. That's an interesting idea. Let me jump over here real quick to Access Manager. Let me see if my comms channels are actually exposed. They probably are. Receive groups. They're not. Okay, so let's do that real quick. So you guys know this trick. Maybe I'll throw this up on the screen just so that you guys can follow along. And you can see my little, that's a terrible picture. Okay, so high bandwidth. Let's cut over here. My Seinfeld reference. All right, so inside Access Manager, the way that you add these, you want to add them, you want to add them to the receive groups. I'll show you this in a minute. But BirdDog comms is, not Coombs comms. We want to add that to the receive group, okay? So here is what my current receive groups look like. This is my studio because I've got things in a group. So we're going to add receive groups, and it's going to be BirdDog comms and BirdDog-send-comms. And this is the two-way conversation, the two NDI channels that we're using for comms. Okay, so that's going to expose things. And then when we go into Dante Bridge, we can look and see if those channels are listed there. So, yeah, good times. Let's find that out. Okay, now that we are kind of up and running here, and it looks like Anthony is he's back from the construction site. We can bring him on board. Hopefully, let's do this one. All right, and hey, Anthony, how's it going, man?
It's going all right. Can you hear me?
Oh no, I have no audio from you.
No.
Go check that audio channel. I'll leave you up
right.
there. Jump into settings and just see what the audio feed is.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then just finishing up the chat here while we do that.
It says I got audio.
Oh, we do. We hear him. Oh crap! This is on me then. Oh, you know why that is, Anthony? Give me a second
here. Somebody hears me.
Yeah, that's my fault. So I have my this Mac that runs StreamYard. It's feeding into the Behringer audio interface, but I unplugged them because there's like an open ground. There's an open ground, so there's like a low buzz that happens behind the scenes, and it's just the input signal has to be hot in order to hear it, and it's really annoying. Anyways, hey, how's it going? Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate you jumping on. It's like meeting a celebrity because I've seen you on YouTube for a couple of years, and then you were like, "Oh, I'll jump on with you," and I was like, "Oh, whoa, this is like we're getting big leagues now."
Yeah, well, just so long as you don't end up with a show that I know nothing about.
Well, welcome to my life, man. That's what I do all the time. Just like, well, I'm unboxing this thing today. Let's find out how it works. It's the Tom Sinclair mentality where he says he has the cover of the Streaming Idiots title where he says, "Oh, well, that's the whole point is like I'm just supposed to fumble into it. And if I fail, I fail. And that's just me being an idiot." But I'm supposed to be like I'm actually running a support show. Like I know what I'm talking about. And so that's generally a challenge for me. Because it really is. Sometimes I am just walking into things blind, and I rely heavily on the chat to give me or tell me what's up and what reality is. So, okay, great. So everybody hears him, and it appears that the audio is on the stream, and I can hear him, so that's all good. FSC2 Mac, what's going on? Thanks for jumping on here. So, Anthony, let's go through this and just kind of talk about where you fit into the picture. I see that you have appeared on multiple YouTube channels reviewing things and giving tutorials and whatever. So let's talk about where you fit into this whole streaming world and where you're at, who you work for, what your exposure is, anything that you want to share with us. That'd be awesome.
Let's see if I have one here. I write for Streaming Media.
Nice.
And I did a cover article. It's actually right there. I did a cover article all in on NDI,
Hmm.
and the Eamon, who recently got married,
Yes.
um, sent me the PTZ controller and cameras and the studio and everything and the headphones. And it wasn't just Bird Dog. It was also New Tech. It was other companies, but it was all about the fact that we're reaching a and this was, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now, reaching a point where realistically, people who are saying no, 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 video over IP, that's not going to be reliable. I think we've reached a point where that's really not the case anymore. And especially with COVID, people have really started to rely on remote production and video over the internet. And I think Bird Dog was sort of like kind of early in on that wave of being all in on NDI, and it was like, this is our thing. It's like,
Yep.
this is what we do. It's NDI. And I got to give kudos to Bird Dog for that, because you could say that Bird Dog jumped on the NDI wave, but you could also say that Bird Dog really pushed that forward in a big way, because you've produced like, this is a solid product. This is a solid product, and people can go out there and use them, especially in terms of full NDI. Whereas at the time, I think New Tech was the other big, um, box maker,
Yep.
and their stuff was HX. So it was really like stepping up the game in the industry, for as far as I would say.
Yeah, it is very fascinating to kind of like learn the origin stories, right? Because um, yeah, when Bird Dog kicked off, like they announced the new protocol. Dr. Cross and his associates announced the new protocol at like a trade show. I don't know if it was NAB or where it was announced, but the story evidently, and I should have Dan and Eamon actually tell it, is that they were sitting in the audience. They were current or previous owners of a distribution, system that they had kind of invested in and grown. They were owners of Blunt Robot for a long time, which is a distributor in Australia. Did a lot of that stuff, and then they were sitting there and thinking like, man, this is something we got to get on, because it is a wave that's coming, and there's great potential here to do it well. And I don't know how much of it they knew starting out, that they're going to be the only full NDI manufacturer for 4 or 5 years. I don't know if that was like in the cards, but they announced this SDK package was basically like, we're going to make this available for manufacturers to use, and they capitalized on that. And we all know and love the studio, rest in peace, that came out of that kind of brainchild idea. And that started them down a road as to like, what if we could take this full NDI flavor to other things? And so the Mini shows up, the P200 shows up, the P100 shows up, and it starts like snowballing into this higher level of video over IP, but it's not the extreme of 2110. And so there's this really interesting, kind of just to kind of see it like evolve. And the company's obviously growing like a weed now at this point, and there's all sorts of people coming on board. And yeah, the potential, especially with NDI integration, like that's really, I think, the next like piece to the puzzle, because getting it to work in installations that are far bigger than just like the NDI scope, but things that are integration across Crestron, Extron, whatever your flavor is there, QSys. There's a handful of integration pieces, and if you can get the endpoint to function in those places and you can plug them in, then you bring this high quality NDI camera that functions in this greater system of automation and this whole sort. So anyways, yeah, it's a really interesting story as to where it developed, and you kind of have watched it unfold in that market, in that streaming market. And you're absolutely right, the pandemic thing ended up definitely snowballing into something. I guess it maybe like exposed the market to like possibilities that otherwise it wouldn't have done. And so there's a silver lining, but it's kind of like you don't really want to say it that way because you don't wish the pandemic on anybody. But the silver lining is it taught us a lot about remote work and what that means, right? So
Absolutely. I mean, and it was interesting how many companies, like my wife's company and everybody, they were like, no, we need everybody to come in. We cannot do remote work. It's just, it's not a thing.
yeah,
And then when COVID hit, my wife was at home full time, and the company literally did not have enough seats on their remote connections to handle the entire company being out. So she could get on at like 6 a.m., but then when she signed back on at 8, she couldn't get onto the server, because literally companies were like set up for like 30% remote at any one time.
right.
And when COVID hit and everybody was forced to like stay at home, it was like, well, how do we continue to move anything forward? And it's like I jumped into vMix and I was doing everything through vMix call that would normally be on site, and it was sort of like, well, you're staying at your house, you're staying at your house, you're staying at your house, and everything, and that's how we sort of got things done.
Yeah.
And my thought is, if we had Bird Dog Cloud at the time, or NDI 5, things would have been a lot different.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's moving in that direction too, where it's funny because like how much of the pandemic stuff, I mean, now we're not even getting close to audio yet, but like how much of the pandemic lessons do you carry on into the future, right? Because people are going back to work. I mean, that's reality, but also the flexibility. I forget what was the stat. It was like 20% of the jobs posted on LinkedIn are for remote jobs, but 50% of the applications are for remote requests. Like 50% of the applications submitted on LinkedIn are for that 20% of the jobs that are posted, because people want to work remotely. And it's really changing the way that like even businesses are considering things. Where if you watch in the news, they're like, so and so, this big company is calling everybody back into the office, as if that's like a bad thing. Like, we want people to come back and work. How dare they call people back into the office so that they can validate owning the office, basically. But it's interesting to like watch it play out, because the flexibility of being able to work remotely now gives you a much bigger pool of employees to draw from. Like if you can accept, it's this, I use this example regularly, where it's like Bird Dog Cloud enables the best video producers to work for the biggest productions remotely from their homes. And instead of flying out, staying in a hotel, going to the site, doing the show, going back to the hotel, 3 meals, 4 meals, whatever it is, flying back out the next day, and they did the one show and they got paid for the one show. Now it's like they can book a morning and an evening and not go anywhere, and they can do that multiple days of the week, right? Like it's crazy that you can do productions at the switching level over a cloud service, and everybody saves money. But the employee makes more money. Now the problem there is now the best guy is now way more available to take more work, which means that it's less work for those others that are trying to get into the market. But it's, the accessibility of the professionals that are now available is, well, if I can do it from my house, I'll charge you a little bit less, but, I'm not going to fly out there, and this is what the deal is. So it's interesting to see it kind of like mapping out, because, I keep saying it, but it's going to change the way we do things here. Even like golf courses, we get guys that have like these remote, like solo packs, where the cameraman's on a solo pack and that's being fed back to a studio somewhere else. And it's just being done all remotely. And the guy's like walking around with a Steadicam and a solo backpack. And that's one of my sources out on the golf course. That's becoming way more common than running huge lines of cable and setting up a camera at each hole and whatever. Now you can just, hey, follow Tiger around with that camera. Whenever we need a Tiger shot, we'll go to you. Like that's his job now. So yeah, it's insane. It's and it's not even what we're supposed to be talking about today. So
I'm sorry I took it there. But
welcome to the support show. This is exactly the way it goes.
All right. I don't feel so bad.
No, not at all.
So we're talking audio today. Is that it?
Yeah, that's what we're supposed to talk about. And we can go down a couple of paths. I don't know necessarily where your expertise lies. I see that you had shared with me a video that I didn't get to in time to even watch, about being a Ninja mixer. And I'd love to talk about the content of that video, because that would be great to to get just even your insights there. But I think the idea is networked audio, and NDI has a flavor, Dante has a flavor. There are ways of getting the sounds across the networks to make the productions a fair bit more flexible. And I can speak to the NDI side of things a little bit, because that's actually how I do some of the audio into vMix for this show. But even from what we've obviously experienced with NDI audio and opportunities, or at least options that you can use. But where do you kind of camp out in this conversation? What exposures do you have to networked audio?
Networked audio, not so much. As I mentioned to you, I have not had opportunity to do Dante yet.
Yep.
Although one of the things that I know about Dante is something I wish NDI had, is that Dante has the ability to handle 2 connections to a destination. And, coming from the broadcast world, where if you're going to run one SDI to stage, run 2. That
Yeah.
way, if something goes bad, and one cable gets nicked or something like that, you've already got the second cable run. The idea of running a single Ethernet line from the truck to inside a building just scares the living daylights out of me. I'd much rather
Yep.
run 2 Ethernet cables and have them both connected, but the system's smart enough to know which one to route data over, because as far as I know, normal TCP/IP does not like 2 connections to between destinations unless you're doing aggregation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. The way around it would be, so you can buy, for example, NIC cards that will have independent MAC addresses, which will act like independent devices. And so, for example, I have a NIC card on this machine that's two fiber connections, 10 gig fiber connections, and they're going to a switch. Well, they both represent themselves as different MAC addresses. Now, the last digit is different, basically, but they both have unique MAC addresses, and so you could split them off and use them as independent connections. Now, if the system is smart enough, though, how do you configure it to do what it is that you want it to do? So I have 2 independent IP addresses that the network thinks that's 2 computers on the network. On my system, I can aggregate those so that I get a 20 gig pipe, but I could keep them individualized as well and have 2 separate IP addresses, 2 destinations, if you will. Mm-hmm. But is the system, the question that you bring up is the system smart enough to know to bring in both of those independently as a redundancy, and then use one and not the other, or cause some sort of complication? So that's an interesting idea. I think it could be done. I don't think it's too far off. It may just be a configuration that would need to be done inside of vMix, as in you send the audio signal over both, you bring them both in as an NDI source or as a Dante source, and you could convert it. I'm not super clear on the Dante integration with vMix. Do you know anything about what's offered for that, other than
I just go back to the fact that I haven't done Dante yet.
Yeah.
But knowing that the way when I started to read into it, that it has your main line, but then it has a failover, so that if all of a sudden it's not getting pinged within a couple milliseconds, it immediately jumps to the next line. Whereas that's Dante doing the failover. It's not the network doing the failover, which is what NDI sort of relies on other devices handling the networking aspect of it. So the router, the switch, and everything else would need to somehow be instructed, to have a main and a failover line, as opposed to Dante handling. I don't know if it does it at the packet level. Maybe there is a Dante expert on here who could jump in on that. But that's something I just wish existed in the video world, is that I could run 2 Ethernet cables into a building through 2 different doors and plug them both in, and then not have to worry, just like we do bonded streaming, we could do multiple connections into a building, and this way, if all of a sudden something cut one line, the show would be impervious to it.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Does Dante just use the 2, like, the channels, and then if it fails, then it switches over automatically, or does it combine the 2, and then if one fails, well, it's still there, so it's one source? Like, I'm just trying to figure out how you could figure out when a source is gone, how to switch it. Like if it drops below a certain decibel level or something like that, then it could switch. I can't imagine it could be done any other way than almost like an NDI soundboard, where you.
NetHab commented, Dante sends the same signal on two completely separate parallel sets of network switches, so any part of the chain can go down and you'll never hear it. And that's what I wish not NDI had, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
NDI, I tried once and I couldn't even get stuff to connect properly.
Yeah. That's it. That's really interesting. I mean, the way that I can see it being done today, and from what I know of NDI audio, and so for example, in my setup, just briefly, the music that runs on the start and end screens of this show is run over VLC, which is being outputted via NDI, and that's an NDI audio channel, and so I can bring that into vMix as a separate audio source, and I add that. So if I wanted to make that, so that's like an internal source, right? But it's accessed anywhere over my office, so it would almost, yeah, this might be something where retransmitter might be able to play a part, and this is something maybe I should ask Jake about. Is inside the new Central program, you can marry video and NDI audio from separate sources into a single source. Mm-hmm. And so in that instance, you could retransmit, use a piece of software that would basically marry or that would retransmit the audio source, the same audio source twice. And that way you could bring them across the wire. Again, though, there'd have to be some sort of trigger to switch it, or play them both, and then if one dies, you wouldn't hear the difference in terms of the audio failing. It's a really interesting idea, and I don't know if you've watched previous shows, but my prediction is that audio is the next thing that NDI is going to go after, and I don't have any sort of like insider trading information about that. I'm just reading, I think I'm reading the writing on the wall, or people are really good at like screwing with me, because I see. So NDI already has a bit of an audio controller out, which I haven't done a whole lot of playing with. But direct audio, for example, from what I understand, the new NDI app inside of NDI Tools allows you to take any NDI audio source and turn it into a computer source, like an output, basically, so that you could use that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Yep. So that you could use that as an actual, audio source on your machine, which means that then you could bring that into programs, things like Teams and Zooms and all that sort of stuff, right? So I see that happening, and that some of that writing has been being slowly written out. But I would be really shocked, and I know a lot of you guys know this, I'd be really shocked if we didn't see the introduction of an NDI audio protocol at NAB or IBC or something like that, where that becomes that they're going to take on the audio over IP realm, just like Dante just announced a video protocol that they're starting to push.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So
because technically there's now three standards, or maybe more, because you've got NDI, then Dante introduced video Dante, I guess.
Yep.
And then there's the SMPTE standard, which is SMPTE, I have video over IP, but it's this massive, standard that has a little bit of adoption, but NDI clearly has a huge head start.
Yeah. Have you watched that happen? Like, because I've trying to understand why that is, why NDI appears to be having this larger market share over the SMPTE 2110 stuff. And I don't know if it's just because of the promotion. I don't know if it's the promotion of the protocol being like easier to implement, or like the network standards are so much, like the requirements are so much less, or if it's just NDI is maybe it's a less I don't know if like what the price point is, so I don't know if it's like less expensive to even buy the products that do 2110. I don't know a whole lot about it.
I would say you basically hit all three reasons. I literally, because you also have to understand, like, how long did it take the worldwide broadcast industry to move from analog to digital? And
Oh,
then it was
geez, yeah.
pushed back again. It's a slow moving thing because broadcast really, there's billions and trillions of dollars riding on everything, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yep.
So nobody's going to sit there and say, hey, let's throw away all this analog gear and switch to 2110.
Right.
Nobody's going to do that because there's no additional ROI from doing that, immedially.
Yep.
Going to HD, kind of really brought more eyeballs back to TV, but irregardless, there's a reluctance to change. So
Yes.
it takes time for people to be like, well, that's been out for a couple years now. Maybe I'll get one of those things and try it. And then they try it, and it slowly trickles in. So NDI has had that head start.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
it's also got a lower, as you said, lower bandwidth requirements. So you could put a couple HD sources on your standard home gigabit internet, and hey, this is actually working. Look, I can do this. This is, da da da. I mean, I remember when the new tech Spark with the blue antennas came out, and people were like,
Yep.
wait, you're going to throw that in the air over Wi-Fi? And it worked then. I mean, it didn't work super great, but it worked. And
Yeah.
imagine if we did that again, now that we've got like improved network, we got Wi-Fi 6 and we've got AC with color coding and all this stuff.
Yeah.
You could almost revisit that now that technology has improved, 5 years of Wi-Fi technology,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
we've got the Mevo starts that do NDI HX at 15 megabits, and it actually looks pretty good for 15 megabit H.264.
I was gonna
At
say,
eight,
is that HX3? What is that?
it's
You know?
HX2.
HX2. Okay.
And but in terms of like not saturating your network and working with what hardware is out there,
Yep.
you could use a Google Puck, which is actually what I've been using for years. You could use a Google Puck Wi-Fi, and they have been amazingly reliable in terms of like throwing video across them,
Yeah.
handling multiple concurrent streams, whereas some other better Wi-Fi hotspots or access points have not done as well.
Mhm.
And then that last point is the NDI, because there's more of it out there and has had competition, and the costs have come down. So you've got all three pillars,
Right.
that really help NDI. It doesn't mean that simply 2110, because it has that rigorous standard, you're going to see Ross and, Grass Valley, and they're going to be like, we're adopting that because
Right.
that's the SMPTE standard.
Well, oh, yeah. You'd hope Grass Valley would take a second look at NDI because Dr. Cross is now the president.
Well, yes, there is that, but I mean, like the major, hardware switcher manufacturers, they're going to adopt the major SMPTE protocol
Right.
first, maybe. But that could be the dipping your toe into the network waters, and it's like, well, since we're already doing network IP video, maybe we can add NDI to this box too.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've kind of having like a scales falling from my brain, or maybe you're just kind of revealing some stuff here that was already obvious or should have been obvious. But perhaps NDI came in on the coattails of 2110 and was like, that's all well and good, but we can get you almost the same quality for a whole lot less input, like in terms of like investment and what have you, which makes going to video over, they should have leveraged that a whole lot more. I wonder why they chose not to, because this is a theory. The 2110 theory is something that I've kind of started talking about the last 3-4 months, because somebody said to me, oh yeah, well, NDI is a lot easier than 2110. They said that to me in August. And I was like, oh, that's what we're comparing this to. Because people, like, it's, and it was weird because, oh yeah, well, NDI is easier to use, than other protocols. They just leave it at that. And it's like, what do you mean by other protocols? Because that, like the other protocol in our realm is not a video protocol. It's Dante, which is what everybody talks about. And that protocol you can pretty much run, compared to NDI, you can run really stripped down networks where it's like You basically need to know the very bottom of networking to make it really work correctly. And then we start, but Dante also has fairly low even compared for a full NDI, low network requirements. And so, but if you're comparing it to the one that's way more, SMPTE 2110 or something that's requiring a whole lot more bandwidth and a whole lot more horsepower, well then yeah, I could understand why you might say, well, NDI, it just kind of works. You don't need to have a sophisticated network. Now I understand that conversation, because to me it was like, why do we keep saying it just works? Like, we do need some network infrastructure. We shouldn't just throw that out. But instead it was like, well, you should see what the other options are in the market. And that was the piece that I had missed, was 2110 requires a whole lot, like way more than what the average Joe is going to be able to put into his church down the street. Like, that's going to be way beyond what we're going to be able to handle. So yeah, it all kind of makes a lot more sense. And yeah, it's kind of mapping out how that all kind of works. Interesting that you mentioned about the HX stuff over Wi-Fi, because with the full flavor, that's still like our wired, we're always using like Cat 6, Cat 6A, 10 gigs throughput, which is still in the distance for Wi-Fi. Like, so we're assuming that you have some sort of processing power, at least a gig or whatever. And so I haven't heard a lot of chatter in the full NDI realm of entering into the Wi-Fi realm. But when you said, maybe we should go back and revisit, where we were back then when we were talking, we put the blue antennas on and it kind of worked. Well, now that Wi-Fi thing is kind of caught up. What I would be interested in seeing is how the technology works with today's connections with back then technology, with the HX protocol back then. So getting a Spark that's running, the original HX with the antennas and the Wi-Fi, and putting that on the AC or the AX networks and seeing how it behaves. Because back then it would have been like the G network or the N network, which was okay, but it wasn't great, in terms of the Wi-Fi standard. But once we got into the kind of the A standards, the AC standard was pretty good. The AX standard was the one that, as I was leaving the Wi-Fi administration realm, that was the one that was becoming more prevalent. And I would be curious to know that if we could get the original Sparks with the blue antennas working with an AX receiver, like being able to transmit that on an AX with the.
Well, they don't do AX though.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, is they'd have to update the Sparks.
Yes. Yeah.
To get them to talk AX.
You'd have to update, and I even posted in the Mevo group. I says, Mevo, the Sparks do such a great job.
Yeah.
With, and I've used 4 Sparks to a single Wi-Fi access point during a concert to be on stage cameras that were just on microphone stands that could be moved around as different bands came up, perfectly suited for that close, it's right there type of thing. And they worked great the entire 4-hour concert. And I was like, I would love to have more flexibility with this. And I posted in the Mevo group, said, imagine just making like a little box, like take the Mevo Start, take the camera out, update it to Wi-Fi 6.
Yeah.
Because, again, those were made 2-3 years ago before 6 came out, or even AC, with the coloring, that now you could plug in your laptop, you could plug in a DSLR, you could plug in a long zoom camcorder and have everything else that the Start can do.
Yeah.
And I was like, that would be pretty slick to be able to give that capability and not have to worry about people saying, why, I wish it was closer, or I wish it was wider. Now it can be wider.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one that does the ROI stuff, right? The Mevo Start.
What's the ROI stuff?
The region of interest. It'll like.
Yes.
Yeah. No, let me just look it up here. The Mevo Start. It's been a little while since I've looked at this actually. Yeah. This camera. Yeah. So you can set it up to do.
Yeah, you can like zoom in on a face, and as the person moves, it'll track it around. And we used that during the concert because people would put them, and they were, then the next person would come up and they would move the mic stand over a little bit. So I would just move the region of interest over, and I literally bought an 8-inch Android tablet for $49 just so I could switch between cameras and move the region of interest around.
Yeah,
and it works beautifully.
That's pretty cool that you have that flexibility. I always thought the Mevo Start just missed out on a mass market with their price point. I always thought that the $400 was just a little above the everybody could get into this type of thing, you know.
It kind of is a little high, but then again, they have a 3-pack, which is cheaper.
Yeah.
And unlike PTZ cameras, not Bird Dog, unlike other PTZ cameras where you buy the camera and, oh, did you want NDI? That's an additional $300.
Yeah.
You know, or you buy the Panasonic CX350. Oh, great. You bought this, you know, $2,000 camera. Did you want NDI? That's an additional fee. And you have to unlock it. It's like, here's this little camera for $399 and the NDI is already active. I'm like, that's the cost of a license.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, in any other, at the bare minimum, that's the cost of the license for a lot of these HX cameras, especially the brand name ones. They know what I won't say they know what to charge, but it's ridiculous what they charge for that feature, because I'm used to just having NDI is the thing that you bought it for.
That's the Bird Dog thing. It's like,
yeah. It's funny too, because
it's an NDI device and it's a PTZ camera.
Right. Yes. Well, we get that all the time where people are like, well, I didn't buy this for the NDI function. It's kind of like, well, you bought running shoes, but you don't run. It's like, all right, that's strange. Like, you just like the way it looks, or it was the hottest thing on the market or whatever. So,
it's
okay.
still a cost-effective PTZ.
That's true. Yeah, it is. There's a request here. I want to hear the origin stories about Anthony, because it looks like he has a lot of old school video knowledge, lots of lenses and reels and all that sort of fun stuff. You have anything to comment on that wall of gear that you got back there? Is it accumulation over time?
I'll do a shameless plug. Other than the fact that I run Frisco Studios here in Frisco, Texas, all the big old ENG lenses up there are. I run a B4. That's a B4 mount lens, ENG lens, on Micro Four Thirds group on Facebook. So when I moved to the DSLRs, I really lamented the fact that you couldn't zoom in anymore. And so I was like, well, just like, you could with those ENG lenses, can you put an ENG lens on a DSLR? I found somebody making mounts and I started doing it. And that was like 9 years ago now that I started putting long zoom lenses. It's long zoom, parfocal, constant aperture. So it's a 1.7 all the way through, and smooth servo zoom. Like Sony now has, hey, we've got a zoom lens. It's like, yeah, it's got 2 speeds, not slow enough and not fast enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, these things have like 7 speeds. I started doing that. And I have a tech channel called AIBA Tech Thoughts on YouTube, where a lot of those videos live. And then when I started moving into the multicam world with the Teradek AirMix, Switcher Studio software on an iPad. Now there's also Cinemaker and Top Director, and Panasonic actually got into it as well with an app called Live Control, which is iPad run, but it uses just their PTZ cameras.
Nice.
Wait, can I put my Fujinon lenses on my A7 camera? Yes. You're probably not going to get full coverage, but if you can window down to an APS-C, it may actually work. Like I said, if you go to YouTube and search for AIBACOM, IEBACOM, or AIBA Tech Thoughts, that will send you down a rabbit hole of videos about ENG lenses on Micro Four Thirds.
Right.
And then I have filmed with that Bolex H16, and the H16. I have not used 1-inch. I came in after 1-inch, but I've used 3/4, Betacam, digital beta. What was the Panasonic format that was digital, but it was like VHS cassettes? I forget what that one was. I did use that. DV cam, DV, all the way up to today. And what you don't kind of see over there is I've got a home studio, and now I've been hired by YOLO Live, which is not NDI. D9.
I saw that.
Thank you, Angus. D9. DVC Pro. I've used DVC Pro, never liked it. Now I have been hired by YOLO Live to produce a bunch of tutorials on their tiny 8-inch tablet that has physical HDMI inputs on top.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
no, I saw that on your channel. You were covering, I watched it. It was probably like 10 minutes I was into it, where it was HDMI, you had audio channels coming in. You had a Zoom mixer, which I didn't even know Zoom made a mixer. I like
no,
I had to look it up. I was like, wait a minute, they have like a full on board? Because I've got Field 1N, I've got the F1 recorder, I've got the H4N, I've got the H4N Pro, like a whole bunch of Zoom stuff. And then I was watching this video and I was like, wait, that says Zoom. And I like went to their website. I was like, they have they have 4 or 5 boards on here. How did I miss that? I don't even know how that happened.
yeah, Zoom, Zoom and who's the other one? Tascam. I mean, they are just duking it out in the audio world. Hey, we can bring about the audio.
Yeah, there we go. Now we're talking about the thing we said we talk about.
Yeah, I got one here. This little thing. Wait, where is it? Oh no, it's over there. I started with this one, the little Tascam.
Yes. Yep.
DR40, really good. I love the audio preamps and the built-in mics. I mean, I've cranked that thing up all the way in the woods and I was amazed at the fact there's no noise floor.
Yeah, and how much more you hear when you do that.
Yeah. Live track boards are surprisingly good. I use an L8 for dial-in press conferences pretty regularly. Yes, I purchased an L8, and I didn't necessarily purchase it for the sound pads, which the Rodecaster does a whole lot better. But I like the fact that for doing what I was going to be doing, which is corporate work, I had the ability to bring in sources, and then in the multiple headphone outputs, I could create different sub mixes. So I could essentially create 4 different aux mix minus versions for people on the headphone outputs. And I was just like, dude, that is a cool feature. And that's literally the reason I bought that mixer.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And so, Jeremy says the Rodecaster is clutch. The Rodecaster is an awesome mixer. I kind of wish it had, the one I've been using for a client is the first one, so it doesn't have the fine control over each of the settings. I wish I could adjust the EQ a little bit more, but I hear the new one is just gives everybody all that control.
Yeah. Sound pads aren't that useful, but the cell phone interface, interface is so handy.
It is.
And Dark Acid gives a shout out to Rodecaster. Evidently, he's a big
plus the ability, like the Rodecaster can record on, all of these can record on all the channels because they're built for like podcasting. So you get ISO records on everything.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic feature. But yeah, going all the way back to the beginning of our discussion, I did an article 7 or 9 years ago now for streaming media, how to be an audio ninja, because I find a lot of people get into video from like other avenues. I mean, mostly corporate, but also in terms of volunteer and church and everything. And video is easy because you plug it in, and if the picture shows up, it works.
Yep.
And then
you can play with the settings and dial it in a little bit.
You can kind of learn the nuances a little bit in terms of lighting and stuff.
Right.
But audio, I plug the cable in, but I don't hear it.
Yeah.
Why not? And then you have to talk to people. Okay, there's mic level, and then there's line level, and then you get more detailed. Then there's professional line level. And,
right.
And then what do you mean 2 different line levels? What is that?
Yeah. All I want to do is turn it up so I can hear things.
Yeah.
It's why do I have to know all this?
And then it's like, well, I've got it turned down, and I turn down the output of the mixer, but it still sounds awful. And you got to go back to the input level of the channel is distorting, or it's actually distorting at the microphone before it's even transmitting.
Yes,
so the video basically went through the 7 different places you got to manage the audio level in order to make sure that you get something that is not full of hiss and not distorted.
Or not completely devoid of the entire low end, because you've got it turned all the way down up front, and then you've turned it all the way up on the next one and all the way down on the next one, and you're doing this. You're depreciating the audio quality all along the line before it even gets to the chance for you to mix it, and get it out the speakers.
Exactly.
Happens all the time, yeah. No, you made that point in that video.
Michael Graves makes a great point. He says video without audio is pointless. The opposite
Boom.
is not the case, and that is so true. People
Mhm.
say it's AV, and I'm like, no. Somebody else, I forget who it was. They're like, it's radio with pictures.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. I love that. Gain staging is important. Way more. It's like beyond important. It's the thing. We have struggled through, and Jeremy's a big fan of this conversation. We have struggled through. If you watch the sequence of these videos of these shows progressing over time, I've changed out microphones, changed out preamps, changed out a bunch of things, and then I was looking through a show just a few months ago and realized that StreamYard was ducking and doing things, and like so like the videos would come on, it'd be loud music, and it would like you could literally hear the decibels being dialed back because StreamYard was managing it, and I was like, oh wait a minute, like what I think I'm sending out and what I'm monitoring is actually not making it to the ears of the people on the other side. So dug into the troubleshooting in the Reddit feeds of StreamYard and found out, oh, I got to turn a bunch of stuff off before this will be appropriate. But anyways, let me just cycle through some of these chat. We've got lots of people chatting today. Dark Ass said 3.5 years ago I was a part of pioneering an NDI installation for a university. They're now building an entire building with Dante and NDI. So Dark, you would have more to contribute to this conversation than you previously have indicated. We should request Anthony to give us a short studio tour if possible. This is your studio at home, right? This is your office at home?
Yes. This is it's basically just a standing stage, so to speak, but it's lit. There's audio and mixing, and I've used it with my TriCaster. I've used it with vMix, and for the tutorials I do for BirdDog, I literally use their switcher to produce the videos about their switcher. Because I felt it would be a little disingenuous to be like, let me produce the whole thing on a TriCaster to show how good this thing is. I said, no, I'm actually going to use the tool because that's what it's supposed to do. It's a video switcher. So I'm going to use the video switcher to switch the
Which
video.
what were you using for that?
Which YOLO box?
Oh, the YOLO. You said BirdDog. I was like, I don't know how you would have done that, but YOLO, yeah, that makes sense.
BirdDog though. I had my this one, the little guy.
Yeah, the 120.
The 110.
Oh, you have a new 110 over there.
No, I have a 100. The first one.
Oh yeah, P100. Yeah, which is it is a 110 if you're using the 10 as the optical lens. But yeah, there he is, Old Faithful.
Absolutely. So yeah, I had this on a stand, and this was like my little side detail camera.
Yeah.
And I purchased a Microsoft Surface Go, tiny little 10-inch tablet, because it could run Studio Monitor, and I could use that for positioning and presets just on a little tablet.
Are you using the touch screen to control that?
Yeah.
Studio Monitor? Oh, that's interesting. I should try that. I guess I have a Microsoft Surface Pro in my office, and just as so I have a PC on the network, and I went to turn on Dante controller this morning, and it started cycling, and then it stopped doing stuff, so I hit restart, and it's been restarting for 2 hours. So that doesn't bode well for that little machine. I haven't had great luck with. I've loaded it up with all sorts of programs and stuff, right? So it's really not its fault. It's not designed to do what I'm asking it to do. But anyways, yeah, it's been a fun little education. How to separate audio Dante networks and NDI networks, because Dante using QoS and NDI is not using QoS. That's a great question. And that is one of the conundrums with Dante and NDI behaving on the same network, which is something that the M4250 Netgear line claims will work with the NDI5 profile that's on that switch, claims that the Dante and NDI protocol can run parallel with each other on the same VLAN. But it is yet to be seen, because when I inquired with engineering, they said, obviously there are some contradictory protocols needed for these two things to work. And so the idea is that it should be working. I mean, we trust that Netgear is just not throwing it out there. We also found out that NDI5, this might be too technical for people, but NDI5 does actually work with flow control on. And so it actually is a little more consistent with flow control on, especially with the RUDP protocol. And so more on that on another show. But it seems like maybe the two protocols are starting to line up. And whether NDI is bending, I can't imagine Dante is going to change their protocol. So whether NDI is bending to line up a little better so that both can run in parallel. But then the announcement of Dante Video came out about 6 months ago or something like that. And then I thought, this sounds more like,
on.
yeah, this sounds more like competition than it does about a partnership. So I don't know. And again, I don't know anything about what's going on outside these walls of this conversation. But it does appear that maybe they're getting ready to duke it out as a protocol, as to like who will dominate the protocol. So is it possible to merge audio Dante and NDI networks? Well, 4250 claims to be able to do it on, and this is what I will be testing with these Dante devices that I have acquired this week. These are just audio interfaces, and I can use them off of microphones and whatever. But it claims to do it. I don't know if you should. Ideally is what you would do what Anthony says, and you would have
two VLANs.
Two VLANs and use a single dual NIC card to run something like Dante Bridge, where you could convert NDI audio over to Dante or Dante audio over to NDI audio and then merge them together that way inside vMix or whatever it is that you're using on that production machine. So there are ways to do it, but ideally, if you're going to you want to isolate the traffic because they are two different protocols, and as you have stated before, QoS is required for Dante and QoS is not recommended for NDI, and those two things really, to use them optimally, I can't imagine that merging them on the same network is still a great idea. So I would say two VLANs with a dual NIC card that has individual MAC addresses that you could bring that data into that machine, that production machine, and then output that onto a separate internet NIC or something like that for whatever it is that you're producing if you're sending that up to YouTube or some sort of RTMP stream.
But what about BirdDog does Dante?
So that has been a part of this development, is Dante for hardware, right? So the announcement for Dante for hardware was done quite a while ago, and as much as I can share, the much as I can share about this saga is there's just a lot of red tape, but we know it works. So what it was doing, what we're hoping to do is to have NDI video, but Dante audio, right? So Dante for hardware, where you'd be outputting a Dante signal instead of an NDI audio signal, and then you could route that Dante audio into your Dante network. But in order to do that, it would all need to be on the same network. And so we know we can do it with the hardware, whether or not it plays nicely and behaves on the network and the routing portion of things, that's to be seen. Again, the way that you do it right now is you have that audio coming in over NDI audio, and you convert it then with Bridge into Dante and spit it out that way. But it's to be seen. And then you can get it into the controller, and there's usually, you can pick between one or two network interfaces inside of Dante controller, and then it'll have a primary and a secondary. So you can have your primary Dante network, but your secondary as the NIC card on the NDI side of things, which then should see sources inside the NDI realm and make them available for switching them over. So anyways, there are ways to kind of do it. It's not pretty. I don't think it's pretty yet. I think we need to spend some time. We have spent a lot of time thinking about how we're going to do this, but I think the Netgear profile, the NDI5 profile, when it first launched, was video over IP and NDI. That's what it launched as. And then shortly after that, a firmware came out, which then wrote Dante on that line as well. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Somebody's trying really hard to get these two protocols to play nicely together. I have yet to know if it does. I just don't know. I haven't done the actual tests, and I normally don't promote something unless I absolutely know it's working. So if NDI devices had a primary and a secondary network interface, that would be great. NDI devices as in endpoints or software? Yeah, cameras, like two NIC cards and a camera? That's an interesting thought, actually.
I'll answer the one question that came out to me. What TriCaster do you have? I have a TriCaster Mini HDMI, but it's been upgraded to AE3 because here's the weird thing. I had it with AE2, and then the start cameras came out, and the start cameras were HX2, but that version of the TriCaster couldn't see them. And I started to like call into to try the new tech people. I says, listen, why can't this device that supports NDI4 see these cameras which are running NDI4? And it turns out that the older version of NDI couldn't see the HX2 protocol, which was new, but they prevented there was like they didn't want people to start talking about different versions of NDI HX. They just want to say just say HX.
Yeah.
And like that creates a problem because you get people out there with older hardware that does HX.
Yeah.
That's not seeing new cameras that do HX because it's
Right.
HX2. And then so now they have a support page that literally lists out what can do what with what version of software. But there was
Yep.
a good year or so where that information was not out there and it was really, really confusing. But that's why I had to
Yes.
upgrade to AE3 because without it, I can't see my cameras.
Yeah, there was a good, a year is probably conservatively accurate. It would be because the language of NDI, like long ago when it first launched, was it's just NDI. It's not full NDI. It's not HX. It's just NDI. That's how we talk about it.
It just works.
And that was a massive mistake because if you're going to have two protocols, you're going to have apples and oranges. You can't just say it's all fruit and it's all the same because they are not the same thing and they don't encode the same and they don't decode the same. And so it's not great to say everything when you market it, when you talk about it in public. We just want you to say NDI and not differentiate between the two because then people go out and buy optics cameras and wonder why they won't decode on BirdDog Flex Outs. And it's exactly for that very reason. Is because, well, the marketing won't let us, and this isn't BirdDog marketing, this is NDI, what you buy into when you buy a license. Originally, it's not that way anymore. But originally it was when you buy the license, you agree, I'm just going to call it NDI. I'm not going to, and it's like registered trademark. But you can't differentiate between the two unless you're having like a private conversation. And then they're saying like, well, I've got all these, PTZ optics cameras. It's like, okay, hang on. Before we go down this road, you should know there are two flavors. And that word of mouth thing could have been solved very quickly. And
so much sooner.
So, yeah, a lot of confusion in the world, which
especially with any technical specification. If it's technical,
yes.
It's like Netgear saying it's just Ethernet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Just
exactly.
plug in the cable, it'll work.
Yeah, just everything just works. And which is also a phrase that I've been pushing against uphill because it's kind of like, yeah, it does work. But the thing they say under their breath after that line is on a properly configured NDI network. Like, well, yeah, you would think it would just work on a properly configured NDI network, but you should probably say the thing you're not saying out loud because that would be really helpful. For me, I used to use QSYS systems where it had two NICs, one primary, one secondary for Dante. It is marked primary and secondary. Yeah, inside the controller, right? Or inside QSYS. Sorry, I missed. Dark has more explaining to do. Potentially done similar to the Zen audio software, but with an inaudible signal that when it goes silent on one source, it changes to a pre-configured NDI backup. That would be a good idea. That's a piece of software that's running that's monitoring though the NDI. So it would be like an auto switcher where when the audio goes dead, then we switch over to a backup source, like a failover
it's
source.
It's like a constant ping,
Yeah.
Tick, 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 tick,
Yeah.
teeny little bits. But as soon as that ping goes away, pick, I'm over here now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The addressable market, or NDI, includes churches and schools, which by volume dwarfs the accessible market of SMPTE 2110. Basically only includes the national broadcasters. Yeah, it's strange to me that you would make a protocol that could only really be adopted by the giants. I mean, is it kind of like a Cisco, like you buy, like corporates buy Cisco switches because they're the Nike shoe of switches, right? Like, they don't know what they're buying. They're just saying, yeah, well, we want the best. So Cisco all the way through our entire infrastructure. It's like, hang on, though, we're doing AV integration, and there are actually better switches. And it's like, yeah, but Cisco is it's a brand name, and all our guys are certified in Cisco, and it's like they cannot not say the word Cisco when they talk about network because that's what they know as like the flagship of data processing in the networking world. But it's odd to me that you would limit yourself, like genuinely rolling out into a larger market. Schools couldn't do it. Churches couldn't do it. realistically. I mean, on a large scale, maybe giant mega churches or something like that, but that's a little strange. I think the packaging of NDI also helps a lot. They left NDI tools to be open. The SDK is available to anyone. There's vendors who are really enthusiastic with technology, including BirdDog and vMix, and guys like Martin who did the Zen projects. And so they took that SDK and like made very useful tools for free, and like that makes it super accessible. I use the old Spark with the blue antennas on a Ubiquiti AP long range as roaming cameras with a TC Mini. It works great. Wow.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, because I know a lot of times okay, I will admit I purchased I have 4 of those with the antennas because, I wanted to do that multi-camera wireless, but at the same time, if you've got a concert, if you've got a corporate show, whatever, people are saying NDI doesn't work over, wireless access, over Wi-Fi. Well, right. Yeah, if you're trying to put all your cameras on Wi-Fi, you're going to have a whole lot of problems. But if you just need that one roaming camera, I'm like, I'm just saying, let's improve the standard. Let's make it work better. But I'm not saying throw all your eggs into the Wi-Fi basket. You're still going to have primary, secondary, stage camera, PTZ. They're all going to be on a wire. But for that one camera that's got to wander around and get the shot of the person asking the questions to the people on stage. Give me one good Wi-Fi, full NDI Wi-Fi on Wi-Fi 6, so that it's all working with the same standard and has the same delay.
It's a tall order, but I wonder though, like with the introduction of Silicon 2, and I don't have an update on Silicon 2, so if you're going to ask, don't ask to the people in the chat. The the Silicon 2 update might make that more accessible. Like the BirdDog camera is running HX2, for example. Obviously, that might make that more accessible. HX3 is more bandwidth, so I don't know why you would want to do that other than it's a little less latency, but then you're adding a Wi-Fi network, so it's like, I don't see the practicality there. But
the Wi-Fi doesn't add latency.
Yeah, but if you had the accessibility of like SRT, which is like 3 meg, and then pretty, like it's respectable quality that you could get in if you're just doing a crowd shot for 3 seconds. Like to that, okay, like now we're talking about something, because yes, it's a secondary or even like a third shot. It's not even a backup shot. It's kind of like filler. It's a B-roll, and that doesn't have to be pristine as long as your audio is good and it flows with the rest of the production. Yeah, I could totally see why that might be useful, and I think the only way to tangibly talk about that in the BirdDog realm is to get the Silicon 2 stuff to start playing nicely with some of those Wi-Fi options. I don't know, because I stay away from it because full NDI is just so thick and heavy with bandwidth requirements that it would overload an access point pretty fast if you were pumping 140 megs.
I'll just relate one instance where I had 2 Panasonics running NDI, and I had a BirdDog PTZ, and we used little Asus square routers, gigabit, not a gaming router, but it's a pretty high-end router, and they have their own version of mesh. So you can have a second Asus. You set one as master, you set the other one as node. And they'll work as master and node wired or wireless. And I set the node in the conference room. We were outside the conference room with the master, and I ran a cable. And for the entire rehearsal, I didn't plug it in. And I was doing 3 NDIs and controlling the BirdDog PTZ without an issue.
Over what? What was what was transmitting the signal from the cameras?
The Asus access point mesh.
Oh, I see.
So it's wired into the access point Wi-Fi between devices, and then wired into the TriCaster.
Is that like a MIMO 2x2 mesh network that you're using, or what is it?
I don't know what they use. Asus just calls it AI mesh.
Yeah, because so I know Ubiquiti's like point-to-point transmission stuff. That is different than, so the Wi-Fi option, it's basically 2 pieces of hardware that are wired in, just like you're explaining. But they have a transmitter signal in both units, and so they're doing a rock solid transmission, and they're they're sending and receiving in basically two different pipes and two different frequencies, and they can get a gig through that, which is pretty awesome. If you're doing like a remote production in your production house, you set up this like satellite endpoint, basically. It's called Max Fiber or something like that. But you set up basically a satellite on one side, and then you tune the receiver to the other side, and it gives you real feedback, like live, the signal's better, best type of thing. If you can get that, actually, yeah, I think that's possible to do one or two, or in your case, I guess 3 signals through that pipe. But that is more of that's not necessarily wireless. I mean, it is, but it's more like air fiber. It's more like a dedicated bridge to get that signal across. And I have heard of loads of dudes that are doing that, especially at outdoor venues, sporting events, racing events, all sorts of things like that, where that's what they're using. This is the device that you're using here.
That was the device that we were using. 2 of those, master and slave, or master and node, as a better word for it.
Yeah, they've updated the term.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I was amazed. I kept expecting to see a jitter and everything. And to be honest, it's probably assisted by the fact that we were using a TriCaster, which of course, for anything that's not program, it's pulling the low res preview. So the bandwidth demands go down. So, and not everything does that. So if you're on vMix, you're not going to have that built-in functionality of all your previews are going to be this teeny little low bit rate thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that it worked, but and we were only jumping 30, 40 feet, but it was wireless, it was Wi-Fi, and it was multiple sources and control going back all at the same time for the entire rehearsal. Now for the actual, conference, I plugged it in, but
sure.
I just wanted to see if it would work. And during the rehearsal, we tested it, and I was just, I told the producer at the time, I says, hey, check this out. This is what we did during rehearsal. And he's like, yeah, plug it in.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting when people get to the place where they're comfortable with it being, and like, again, and that's the piece, right? You show up, you set up, you test it all, everything works great. And then the audience fills the room and all those bags of water show up, and then your signal drops and it's all in rough, pretty much different. It's even hard to test it. Like, how do you test what 300 people is going to be like between the receiver and the stage? It's a little impossible to do that. So why does AV start with A? Oh, that's why AV starts with A. Yeah, because audio is king.
Audio is key. Audio is absolutely the most important thing. Which is why I'm really surprised. I see people get into doing shows and stuff like that, and their focus on audio is non-existent.
Yeah.
I would watch this. I had a company call me, and they says, yeah, we want to step our game for our quarterly announcements from the 2 CEOs, big investment firm, millions of dollars and stuff like that. And they showed me what they did last time, and they had a laptop set on a table where everybody in the room was watching, and they set it up on Zoom, pointed the webcam at the audience, and that was it.
Wow.
So 30 feet away to the laptop.
Yeah.
And no close shots, no nothing else, no actual slide presentations, just whatever the webcam saw on the screen. So whenever it was bright, you couldn't see the 2 people standing.
Yeah, it would have blown it out for sure.
And you hear the whole room. It says, but we get to hear the people ask questions too. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, I can hardly hear the people speaking. And this is what you're presenting to people who want to give you beaucoup dollars.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting conversation, kind of rabbit hole to go down, because I've been experimenting a little bit on the weekends with mic placement for audiences. And so, we have a program feed for the production that I help with on Sundays. So we have a program feed that comes in for a church, and we've been trying to give the audience that watches online more of a like a room perspective, because what we don't want to do is, well, it goes back to having crap audio, but what we don't want to do is provide unintentional separation from what's actually happening in the auditorium compared to them sitting at home. And that's always the thing, is like you're watching like through a window, So there are some churches that just have like one static camera that's up in the rafters or in the balcony or something like that, and it's just like just a shot of the stage with, you can't see the screens. There's no switching. There's no alternate shots. Nothing like that. Which is literally like standing up on the balcony and looking through a window and just watching what's happening, right? And like what you hear is what you hear, and and what you see is what you see, and you can't see other things that are happening. So then we took it a step further. We got a couple of extra cameras, started doing alternate shots, tried out, Cam Director to have it follow people on stage and like do auto tracking, whatever. And that was okay. But then we got talking about the actual audio experience, because in the end, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. It kind of matters more about what you can hear. And so I started playing around with mic placement. So I bought some cheap Behringer C2s, C3s or something like that, which are basically just pencil microphones. Put them at the front of the auditorium facing the audience. And we started piping that audio in left and right to the stream, and gave the guy that was running the stream basically jurisdiction to add it if the audience is singing or asking questions or interacting with whoever's presenting or whatever. And that was okay. But then I got a DBX reference mic actually from Bird Dog Jake, and he was like, yeah, I said, I'd love to, reference the room, like ping the room and see how we're doing. And what I did instead is I took that microphone and I put it at the back of the auditorium, kind of up against the back wall, and I removed the two pencil microphones and just run that reference mic. And it actually provides enough room ambient sound to not even need to use the effects channel, because it's actually natural room reverb that it's picking up, and the residual sound of the audience. And so I thought, well, that's interesting that instead of getting the audience sound that's coming towards the stage, it actually works better for room audio reference to put it at the back of the room and to hear the spatial timing of the speakers, for example. So when somebody's on stage and they're singing or playing an instrument or whatever, and it leaves the speakers and goes and travels to the back of the room, that time difference is now being piped into the stream, so they hear the delay that the audience is actually hearing. But also then when the audience makes noise, so they sing or they interact or whatever, and that sound is going towards the stage and bounces off a really it's a very non-acoustical church in terms of it's poorly managed this way. That sound bounces off of a flat wall that's on the back of the stage and comes back across the room. They pick up that spatial sound as well, which actually sounds more like what it sounds like in the room than if you were to capture it at the front, because the audience isn't sitting at the front. They're not listening to that sound. They're listening to the room sound, the general bouncing around of the sound waves throughout the auditorium. And so it's actually more accurate. I don't know if it's better. I think it's better, but I should probably ask some people. But I think it's more accurate in terms of what's actually happening in the room. The only danger is that people like to talk in the back of the auditorium. And so, because it's not going to get caught on the microphones that are at the front of the stage. And so you have to be Johnny on the spot when it comes to listening to that feed and making sure that you're not picking up people's conversations about like, oh, Jimmy's got a poopy diaper. It's like, whoa, like all of a sudden you got to like, oh crap, that's being picked up in the ambient microphone, because we've got that turned up so that we get the full volume of the audience. So placement is still something that we have to fix. But I was surprised that moving it to the back of the auditorium actually gives a better result in terms of what the room actually sounds like. It's more accurate. I don't know if that's anyone else's experience or not, but that's just kind of like boots on the ground. That's what I discovered.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the comments, and there's a lot of people agreeing, and I will be right there with you. I for many years I had an Audio Technica stereo microphone that I would always add to any production just for a bit of ambience of the room as well. And I did a wedding, and I had my little the Zoom with the little color screen on it, and
Yep.
it's got that little stereo head on the front of it, and that's literally why I got that thing, so that I can have my wireless mics plug in and then also mix in, because this was like an outdoor wedding, so I wanted to have the wind, the birds. I wanted people who are watching online, because this was during COVID. I wanted people who are watching online to have that experience, that stereo soundscape, like they were there. So it really delivered that extra 2 channels that I needed to make the remote audience sitting in front of a screen feel more like they were there. Well, if they were listening with earbuds or headphones or.
Yeah. Yeah. I've almost gone to the, okay, so there's another project that's underway. Last week at the service, I was using a shotgun microphone just to test, and I was going into the H4n recorder, the original, the silver one, eh? And so I had that. That's my own. I was powering that, just DC. And then I was using a battery to power an NTG2 microphone, Rode shotgun microphone, and running that into the H4n just because I wanted to see. There's a instance in January where I'm going to need to run everything off batteries. So I was just like, let's just see how this goes. So I plugged in that shotgun microphone at the back of that auditorium, put it up on a stand, and then pointed it at the stage and hit record. And the recording I got was nothing compared to what the reference microphone picks up. It was totally different. And this really probably isn't much of a shocker, but it was a very narrow. It did not catch much of what the room sound like. And the people on stage talking into microphones into a speaker that's running at like 80 decibels at the back of the room. So we don't go super hot at that congregation. It's like 80, maybe like 85 decibels at the back of that room where that microphone is. It was like muffled. You clearly, like I had that thing like turned up. And it was very hard to make out, really. I mean, you could hear the words, but it was not clean at all. And I thought, man, that's so bizarre. The other microphone I'm going to try is a 3DO Studio ambient microphone. The problem, it's a spatial, like a 3DO Studios. It's a, like a binaural microphone. The problem with that is TSA always pulls me over whenever I go through the airport with that thing. And it's because it has two silicone ears, literal ears on the side of that thing. And when they scan it, it always looks like I've created some sort of bomb to like in my shop at home. Like, what is this? I'm like, just Google it. It's a real thing. Like, it's just a microphone, but it has a 9-volt battery inside. It looks very sus. And so
okay. It's a microphone. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Sure it is, buddy. So they always like swab my hands for explosives, and like I have shut down TSA lines in Detroit's international airport flying with this thing, and so it's always like I don't really want to take it, but honestly, if you're going to capture the audio from the room and the speakers at the same time and make it sound like it sounded like in the room with the audio technician and all his work that he's done, you can capture a lot of that data, the spatial data, by using a microphone like that. But it's such a pain in the rear to take because if you have to go through security, they always shut me down. So
now I don't want John on my flight.
Yeah, seriously, it's like there's yeah, I get, it's not that I get in trouble. It's like then I have to like always give an explanation, and I'm always like, yes, I know, and sometimes I like take it out and put it in the bin, hoping that like they're not gonna pull me over. Because it's easier that if it's not like tucked away in my bag or something like that, then it's not obvious like I'm trying to hide something. But it used to be from a school that I used to work for, and then when I came here, I offered to buy it off of them, and I did, and I love it. I take it up to Northern Ontario, and like you can record like wilderness stuff super easy, and you put on headphones, and it sounds like you're there. Like it's what it's what they use to record virtual reality stuff usually is, and it's super simple. It's just a left and a right channel, but because it has those silicone ears on it, it captures sound waves like our ears hear it. So I took it and I recorded a chorus. For example, we did a song and I recorded it with that. Well, if you just listen to it on your iPhone, you don't get any of that information. But if you put on good left and right headphones and listen to that, it's like you're standing in the middle of that group of people singing, and you can pick out the basses are over there and the sopranos are over here, and it like you can really hear. You can hear almost everything. Like you can hear when people sing the wrong note, and you know where they were in that circle because it's very obvious. And that's the microphone. I have taken that microphone to this gig years ago and recorded things with it there. And it is literally, if you wanted to hear what it sounded like during that session, just put on headphones, and it's that easy. But it always shuts down the TSA line, and I kind of need to make the flights that I'm going on that day. So it's one of those things that you have to figure out. But anyways,
well,
ambient recordings. Go ahead.
I don't do 4-channel. I mean, I do 2-channel, but I've done a lot of ambient recordings of a monthly performance when I was in Philadelphia. Did that for 5 years, and I did it with the Audio Technica. That's
Yep.
this one right here, the A22. But eventually, something happened with the capsules, and it basically died. But that was a great
Gotcha.
stereo microphone, and then I replaced it with this one.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get the little extension cable out of it, but just being able to have that point source, so it's a single point as opposed to like separate microphones. It's like some people set up different microphones. Well, you're ruining the sound stage because
Right.
it's all coming to, you want to hear it from this point. Like I'm at a single point,
Yes.
I don't have the head in between the two capsules. But for me, when you say, when you're talking about hearing a chorus, I would do a chorale with 13 people and we could get the same thing. You could hear different voices at different places. So it may not be as specific because it doesn't have the
Yeah.
physical blockage in
Headspace.
between the two microphones, but it gets you, I would say 80% of the way there, and TSA is not going to stop that.
Yeah. So what do you think about these Zoom capsules? Because I have two versions of this recorder. I have the H4n and the H4n Pro. Both of them have those left-right capsules that was the other thing, is I could have just threw that on there and hit record on that Zoom recorder. I had the H4n at the time, which was the silver one. But like, how do you find that? What's your experience with those? Because I just have always gravitated towards I want a microphone that's going to do the job. So that's why I took the NTG2 and thought, okay, well maybe this will capture enough, like the pattern on it will be narrowed in on the stage enough where it will pick up the speakers, but also some of the ambient group. And then I realized after the fact, no, that's really for a target that's really close, like that's within 5 feet. It's not, it's not going to give me the results that I want. And then, I just confirmed it on Sunday. But with this guy, like again, if it's positioned at the back of the room and it's listening to the room sound as well, do you find that those microphone capsules that come on these, so I suspect, like those look almost identical to the ones that are on the H4n. I don't think that
Yeah,
they are
there
too
you
different.
can rotate these.
Yeah.
And I know the ones I have on the other ones I have on the Tascam actually have this mode where you can rotate the capsule, and well, you can't really see it. You can take the
Oh yeah, I
capsules
can.
and point them outward as
Yeah.
opposed to crossing. So it actually gives a little bit more separation. The overlap is a little bit less because
Yeah.
they're both cardioid.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Everybody has a different way of saying that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's an interesting catch though, is because I don't know, like I just never really, I guess, trusted it to do it.
No, I mean, when I did my stuff in Alaska with this little guy, obviously this is Tascam, that's the Zoom. I was blown away when I would listen to headphones later, and it would just be like this huge soundscape. Now, for your use, I would actually just say do an A/B test over
Yeah.
them to see if it gives you because you have a reference. You have this
Yeah.
high-end reference. I don't have that, so I might not realize what I'm missing when I say
Sure.
this sounds fantastic to me. But you'd be like, yeah, but there's something even more fantasticer.
Right, right. Yeah,
The other
and
thing I would say is I found the Zoom, the fact that the capsules are physically attached to to the rest of the unit, they're not isolated well at all. So if you're fingering different settings, you hear it on
yeah,
these capsules. So
interesting.
they make a separation cable that's far too expensive for what it really is, but that's really necessary to use these capsules with the unit. And unfortunately, it puts the volume control for the capsules away from the unit.
Oh, that's
So
garbage.
what I ended up doing actually was I plugged a stereo mic into the side of this. There's actually a microphone input on the side of this,
Yeah.
and then I had that microphone set away, and then I had the volume for the stereo. It's a stereo level adjustment. I had that in addition to my 3 wireless microphones.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing, is you can do multi-track recording on here, right? Where you can have
Yeah.
multiple inputs on
And
this
then I took
guy.
the stereo mix, and then the stereo mix went into the switcher. And at the time, I was using Switcher Studio with a bunch of iPhones, but this went into the iPad. So I was able to independently adjust the groom's mic, the officiant's mic. I had a microphone on the musician, and then the stereo mic just out kind of near where I was, but I wasn't talking to anybody. And then that way, during different parts, if the wind was hitting the groom's mic really hard, I could just lean on the officiant's mic and go back and forth. It's also a backup in case one mic all of a sudden has RF problems or something like that.
Right.
I'm a fan of having two pathways.
Yeah, well, and shoot, who was it? I just listened to a show about redundant audio and basically being, it was about microphones, how actors use microphones, wireless packs, and how they wire them in like wigs and stuff like that. Don't ask. I research weird things at night. So they were doing wireless microphones and where they position them and how it works, and then what sort of responses they get in different places of the face. And ideally, they always want it right in the middle of their forehead, because that is the full sound off of basically what is the soundboard of your face. And so you get the cleanest, but the least interference in terms of sibilance and in terms of like enunciation and singing. You get like the widest range. And if you have somebody who has like a baritone or a bass voice, that is where the resonance of that section of that voice comes off of. So like really low altos, they love to place that microphone in the middle of their forehead because they are able to get that sort of like full resonance. So it was really strange that I was researching all of this, but they were talking about wiring them with two mics to have a redundancy in order to, if I don't like that sound, I can alternate to the other one. It's not just in case of failure. It's like, which one's better?
Right.
And then we can go, like, especially in live performance, you can go to either or.
I got to go get my door again. Hang on.
Okay. Yeah. All good. Yoink. Okay, cool. So, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, cool. Hey guys. All right. So thanks for hanging on, everybody. This is good. I'll try and burn through some of these comments while we are hanging out here with Anthony. It's always good to have a chat with somebody new, and maybe I'm going to make him a regular, because this is a lot of fun stuff for me. We're not really necessarily going down the network audio realm. We did talk Dante briefly, but let me jump in here and see what I can recover in terms of the chat that I'm completely ignoring, and I'm really sorry about that, folks. So HX, HX2, HX3, yeah, now you know my pain. When they're like, our camera does HX, my brain's like, hang on. The original? Because that's discontinued. Let me hear you say NDI multi-track audio. No, don't get crazy. Not yet. Although I know that one of the big complaints about NDI audio is that it was only doing 2 channels. And so there's chat about how many more channels can we do. SDI does 8 or 16. I can't remember. It's 8. Okay. So, if NDI is, so there's potential to do 8. I think there's potential to do 8, but
where's the lunch part of the show?
The lunch part?
Something interesting?
I didn't send you the Gatorade Zero. I figured that was probably, but I'm going to have all sorts of energy, and you're going to have to stick with your Diet Dr. Pepper. The catch will be, that ripped actually kind of easy. So yeah, we can jump over to Snacks on Stream if that's, I wasn't going to officially do it, but since you brought it up, Anthony's going to give us his entire, his breakdown of his Diet Dr. Pepper, and we're going to run
fizzy,
Snacks on Stream.
It's good. I'm done.
Yeah, and it's I think it's 0 calories if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, here, I'll run this bumper. We'll be right.
John's just making up stuff to start drama.
Look, I don't know.
Look at him.
Wish me luck, folks. It's my first Vegemite experience. Final, this is like cheese flavor or something. It doesn't really look too appetizing.
Good golly, this is something else, man.
Here's the thing about Pop Rocks, and I don't know if I'm the only one like this. Pop Rocks have always been a social experience for me.
I did not think that is what you were going to say. That's hilarious. That is awful. Oh, God, that's so bad. Jeez. Holy smokes, man.
Yep, good old snacks on stream. Good times, everybody. Welcome back. Oh, he's picked up the here. You got kind granola. Is that what that is?
Peanut butter and dark chocolate. Yeah, I guess it's kind of granola.
Yeah, there you go. All right. So if you're ever wondering, if you've never taken the plunge and purchased the expensive granola, Anthony's going to let us know how that tastes. And in the meantime, I've poured this entire powder into this cup of water. It is not mixing on its own, which I thought like it would start absorbing, but it definitely isn't. And so let's give that a stir with this spoon. It's clumpy like when you pour hot chocolate milk mix in cold milk. It's not mixing at all. This doesn't bode well.
Were you supposed to use hot water?
No, it's supposed to be so that you can like take it camping and stuff, from what I understand. But yeah.
Question is, where is your shaker bottle?
Yeah, seriously. Maybe that's what it's supposed to be. It's like a protein shake, and I'm not. I definitely did not do that.
Have you tried those things you keep seeing advertised now, like Kachava and Mud and all these things?
No, I can't get on board with Mud because the dude, he's always like, "Hey, what's that in your cup? It's mud, bro." And I'm like, "All right, stop. I can't. I'm not your bro. I'm a customer. No, I can't do that." But yeah, this is something else. It's definitely, maybe if I stir it fast, maybe that'll do it. I don't know. Well, it's just all kind of circling around in the middle of the tornado I'm making, but it's not dissolving. And then when I stop, it just spreads out again across the cup.
We got comments coming in. Somebody responded to me. I asked, should it be hot? He goes, hot Gatorade?
Oh yeah, NetHab, yeah. Not quite, yeah. Hot Gatorade. That would be a different experience altogether. That's next year's show, when I start doing things like doing the instructions wrong and still eating it. The goal of Snacks on Stream was not to like make John sick. It was supposed to be like try fun things and give people like, yeah, if you're adventurous, go ahead and try it. But it did turn out to be, for a while, try and burn John's taste buds with the hottest Korean ramen you can find. That lasted for quite a while. For probably 3 or 4 months we were doing that. So yeah, where's your shaker bottle? That's exactly right. Cold water. This is a Balu. Balu brought this to the office, so that's why he's giving instructions. It's the alternative to coffee. I tried to get him to try mud, but he wouldn't. Yeah, I just can't. I don't know. I can't. That guy on the sales pitch I just can't get on board with that. Something's not right there. And why do they always have to have their shirt off?
Well, what's the one that Jennifer Aniston advertises? She does one as well.
Oh, does she? That I did not know.
The girl from Friends. Yeah.
Try the ghost pepper microwave popcorn. Now, hey, I saw that, and I think Monty ordered it because next Thursday, plug for next week's show, next Thursday's show, is we're doing a Bird Dog roundtable of anybody that's anybody that's available. And so Bird Dog employees are going to sit around and talk about 2022 and what we're looking forward to in 2023. And at least Monty will be eating some spicy popcorn. And I'm really tempted to order it and get it here in time for that show. But, Amazon and their 2-day delivery is really, like, at this point, a week and a half because of Christmas. But, yeah, good stuff.
All right. I don't know what it is with the Kind bars, but I'd rather have a Quaker Valley granola bar.
There you go. What's wrong with the Kind bar that you say that?
It's just blah,
Is it tasteless or is it just the wrong tastes?
It's just kind of tasteless with a not good aftertaste.
Gotcha.
Like after it's gone, you're still like left with
like a lacking in enjoyment.
And it has dark chocolate, and I don't taste dark chocolate, so I don't know what kind of dark chocolate they're using.
You got gypped on the dark chocolate side of things on that one. They just didn't add it. Put it on the label, but
chunks in there, but
talking about features.
I mean, heck, you can get those other protein bars with just a little bit of drizzle on top, and they taste all kinds of chocolate. Of course, it's probably artificial flavor, but
that's true. Okay, so this kind of melded together. Let me jump over to my vMix machine here and show this on stream so that we can.
Are you using this Bird Dog for the overhead camera?
I am. Yeah, it's a P100 up there.
Hey.
So that is this low bandwidth? Yes, it's in low bandwidth right now. So switch that over to high bandwidth. There we go. That's a little more.
Oh my goodness! Now I can see the bubbles.
Yeah, exactly. A little cleaner. So this is still some of that like chunkiness on the top, but I'm kind of tired of stirring, so I'm just gonna go with it. I think we'll see how. I was happy with the last one Balu gave me, and I thought, all right, I'll try the other one. So there's also just the plain Jane white one, Glacier Cherry, I guess, which is the regular. But anyways, so yeah, here we go, folks. This is for so that you don't have to try it if you don't want to. Oh man, that's not enough water apparently. Oh jeez. Yeah, that's
Did you get the stuff that's supposed to be for the big container they have at football games?
the big orange Tang containers. Yeah. Old school. Didn't McDonald's used to make those originally, and then Igloo started making them? Yeah, that's useless information that no one needs. What theme, Dark Acid, do you beg to differ with? Jeremy says, yeah, try that ghost pepper. And then bottoms up. Yeah, exactly. That's it's a little chewy. The top layer is a little chewy, so I don't know if that was the right idea, but
You see that YouTube channel where they eat 10 different hot wings and have
hot
discussions?
ones. Yeah, and he rapid fires questions. It's so brutal. It's not kind at all.
I like the one. I just saw the one he did with what's the astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Oh yeah.
And it was really funny because Neil initially he was like, "Yeah, I don't know how far I'm going to get." He was like trying to preface it and manage expectations. And he was going through, and like the next to last one, he's like, "Oh, I like this one. This one's really good because it offends the entire mouth all at once."
Wow, that's a great impression too. Kudos to you for pulling that off. But yes, that's exactly what he sounds like.
And it was interesting because one of the comments of that one was that it was interesting, like they had one of the restaurant guys on there, and he was like, so and so, was sitting there eating through and like tearing up and weeping and gulping down the milk. Neil deGrasse Tyson eats the wings and explains the universe.
Yes. Breaks it down. My favorite was Alton Brown because he would eat them and then he'd be like, "Oh, that's terrible," and then he'd eat a little more and be like, "I could fix this. I could fix this one. This one needs these things." And he like start listing off the ingredients. It's like that's next level. When you eat something you don't like, but you come up with a solution to fix it for them. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so we'll keep drinking these things and eating these things. I do want to just show, for those of you who are not, and maybe everybody here is, but for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with the Dante interface and how this stuff kind of works, I can show you the controller. That's for free. You just need to get an account on, and let's cut over here to this. So all you need to really do is get an account with Dante, and I will throw this up as the solo. Oh shoot, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, let's try this. Okay, so hopefully this is big enough, and Anthony can still be on here. So this, I only have one Dante source on the network right now, and it is one of these Dante AVIO interfaces, basically. And what it does is it just takes an output, which is in this instance a XLR, and it converts it into it's 2 channels actually, but it converts it then into a network protocol that you can put on your network, and then it's discoverable with the control, and you can route that audio where you need it to go. And so there are lots of things in the world that talk Dante, and you can send, obviously, then specific signals to specific receivers. BirdDog Dante Bridge is one of those things that you can fire up, and it can show up in the receiver side or the transmitter side. It does one or the other, and you can set it up to either transmit NDI signals into Dante, or you can set it up to receive Dante signals and convert them to NDI. And you can go in even and label those NDI sources so that when you look at them in Studio Monitor, or you pull them in TriCast or in vMix, and you're listening to those sources, you know which one you have. So now we can use the grid inside the controller to route that information to wherever you need it. Now, the guy to really show this off, and maybe we'll try and do this before the year is out is Jake, because he has a full-on Dante network up and running with multiple sources, and he's using Bridge in that fashion to convert NDI sources over to the Dante protocol. But essentially, you get Dante controller, and then you can get Dante Bridge, and Bridge will then run on the PC. Let me see if I can. I don't know what this is going to do to my CPU level, by the way, but we can fire up actual Dante Bridge. Let me see. Is it already running? No, it's not. So BRIDGE. Be careful when you type in Bridge, because that might fire NDI Bridge, which is a different thing altogether. That is not going to help you with this Dante conversation. Okay, and once you put in your license, you're going to get a screen that looks like this. So it's a little strange. I don't know if this is the latest version of Dante. This is just one that I pulled down from the share file with the engineers. But when you click on configure, it says, please, comma, which I think is hilarious grammatically, by the way, but please install Dante Converter. But it's as if the engineers are like, please, like, come on, dude, install Dante. Like, as it's just a, anyway, sorry. It's a, why there's a comma there, I don't know. Please install Dante controller. Why you needed a breath there, I'm not too sure. But anyway, so you get this little screen here. And what you do is you set it up before you really turn it all on. So you need to decide a few things. What network interface is going to be your primary? And typically that would be, depending on how you're going to use this. Are you converting Dante to NDI or NDI to Dante? But what is that network that you're using that you want to primarily use? And so in this instance, I'm going to use the same fiber network that is my primary inside of controller. So we can find that out by clicking on this little controller button here. And this says fiber 1, gives the MAC address, gives the IP address here inside controller. So that's great. So I want to do the same thing over here. Oh, yeah, and you can see that AVIO control, or that interface is already showing up inside Dante controller. By the way, kind of rolling the dice here and hoping that this works. So we're going to make the same network. And we can name this, the actual Dante network that we want to name it. You can set a custom name here for that. And then we want to decide if we're going to convert Dante signals, so the two that are coming out of my audio interface, if we're going to convert those into NDI sources, we want to decide, are we doing that with audio pairs, or are we doing all 8 channels into one signal? So in my instance, I'm actually going to leave it as 8 channels and just say, I'm just going to make one NDI source out of all of the Dante sources that I'm going to use. And you're going to use controller to do that. On this side, do we want to convert all 8 channels into a single Dante source, or do we want to make multiple channels? And then which ones do you want to use? So here are all my NDI sources on my network, and you can select multiples to do that. So yeah, just a few. There's only a few in the support department. So what I'm going to do is just say, I'm just going to take all channels and I'm going to make one Dante source, and I'll select that source. So in this instance, I'm going to take the VLC output, which is that music that is being played at all times, by the way, while this show is running. That music that's being played, I'm going to create that NDI source into a Dante source. And then here, again, I'm going to take all 8 channels, and I'm going to call that NDI output Studio Dante. Let's just say Studio Dante. I don't need to put Bridge on there. So that's going to be the NDI source name if that's what we're going to use. And then we're going to turn on that system. Now, it's going to start generating those sources, and it's going to gray out the system here while it's kind of setting that up. But when it's ready to go, this little DB symbol is going to disappear, and now I can decide which ones I want to turn on. So if I turn on the NDI to Dante, you're going to see that music being played on that VLC channel here, and that is that source that I'm using. But I can't change it now. Like I can't change it while it's running and while it's enabled. You have to do it all beforehand, and then it'll show up as a NDI source. Now, can we go one step further? I haven't tested this. This is the streaming idiots thing that Tom plays onto. Okay, so here, first of all, I'm just going to kill this. I'm going to open Studio Monitor, and under here, it says Studio Dante. So that's a new source, and that's the one that I named it here, right? Yeah. So this is that Studio Dante source. So if I say this and say Studio Dante, and I light up the audio interface on this. That's on. Are we showing the dB meters? We are. And this is, NDI to Dante, so that's the wrong one. So on here,
you're pushing to Dante. You're not pushing.
yeah,
to NDI.
I'm pushing to Dante here. So that should mean that those sources should eventually show up here. And this piece of software I'm not super familiar with yet. I just kind of get the idea. It creates a grid, essentially. So when you expand these and you have receivers, you'll have that grid. So let's light up that other side of this. So then we got all that going, and I'm going to turn this on. And in here, this is where this should show up because you should start routing that data into this controller. So I'm going to restart controller real quick. The controller. Again, I'm pretty sure I got this off of the website this morning to see if is that the latest version that we have. Device info. It shows bridge. Okay, so let me show you this. Oh, come on. There we go. So here it shows that it's discovered bridge as a Dante device on the network. However, it doesn't actually say that it is interfacing with it. It doesn't actually show that it's showing up here. So I'm still only have my two sources. So, and I don't know what the sequence of events is, and full disclosure, I also haven't verified that I have the latest version of this. This may be a beta from times gone before. So we can clearly restart these if we need to. We can turn them off and turn them back on. Or we can restart the whole configuration in one fell swoop. So we can shut it all down. That kills all the sources, all the signals that are happening. This is really only running when that switch is flipped and these ones are selected. So can't tell you necessarily why it wouldn't show up as a receiver because it's definitely, because it should be. But when I have seen it, when you start connecting them here on the grid, it did work this morning. But when you connect them here on the grid, the signals then start showing up in these channels. So you know that you're getting an actual audio source from the controller into Dante Bridge to then be converted into NDI, which is what I want to do. I would obviously want to route the Dante signal from here, from this guy, channels 1 and 2 into Bridge, and then that would then send that signal as an NDI source back to make it available on my NDI network. That's the general idea. But I should probably also make sure that I have the latest one because that would also be beneficial for everybody involved. So when we're talking about routing Dante, now Bridge is just kind of like one piece, okay? But the Dante world, if I can confirm at a later date that we are able to have Dante and NDI packets on the same network and they're not going to cause collisions or they're not going to cause any sort of, can Dante operate without QoS or can NDI operate with it? I mean, there's, what are the compromises here that we can make those things work? Again, when I asked HQ about it, they said, well, obviously we know that there are some contradictory protocols, so it's yet to be seen. But in this instance, it's like, well, at least we can use Bridge to convert. So maybe I have Dante devices on my network, but I want to bring everything in over NDI. Well, Dante Bridge can do that. And you don't necessarily even need controller to make that happen. So there you go. That's what I know in that realm, at least, which is very little. And I've completely neglected the chat. So let's see what corrections I have been told since I started going on here.
The event log was red.
Yeah. That's true. Event log is red. And when it was working earlier, that it was red then too. So I'll double check that. So we need to add Dante Bridge license to BirdDog NDI Dante Bridge. So there is a license for Dante Bridge, like it's a purchasable product basically, and mostly because Audinate charges us to use the Dante protocol. That's what we're covering. And so yeah, there is an actual NDI. There's a fee for Dante Bridge if that's a program that you're interested in getting. Event log light in Dante controller is lit red lower right hand corner. It's like putting exclamation points after sorry. You can't route to the same device. But it should show up in the controller, right? Dante Bridge, I mean, it did before. That's the contradiction that I have, is that it did show up there. I suspect that there are no Dante devices on the network that you can act as a clock software, nor the dongles are powerful enough. Can the bridge support 2 NIC cards? Currently, no. You have to select the NIC card, which is that's the request, right? Is like, well, Dante controller supports 2 NIC cards as a primary and secondary. If you could support 2 NIC cards and send that signal out over both, then you could bridge those 2 VLAN networks, and we wouldn't have to worry about network protocols initially. You know, people are still going to want to put it on the same VLAN, but initially, yes, that would be the desire to do that. The dongle can still perform as a clock. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Sorry, Anthony. This is the part that we enjoy, watching John suffer. Yes. Welcome to the party. You've been invited.
Welcome to the party, pal.
That's right. Anyways, I'm also willing to unbox this on camera. It is the most basic. Me personally thinking it's a little overpriced, but anyways, it's the most basic packaging in the world. This box can sustain very little damage. I realized because the other box was crushed when it showed up. And this is all that comes in it, is literally just this. It's an analog input adapter. It runs north of 200. It's like $230 or something like that. It is dual channel. It's powered over, is it PoE? I believe it is. But then inside is literally just more cardboard and a 1-page, not even on the back. It's just a 1-page like, hey, you have a 12-month extended warranty offer. That's all it is. No user manual, no nothing. Pretty flimsy.
They could have saved that and just printed it on the box.
Seriously, there's lots of room to say, like, cut this out and send it in for your extended warranty. But, yeah, it's pretty basic. So for what you pay for, oh, yeah, there it is, PoE switch compliant. So, yeah, it's PoE powered. And that's great. I love that. I love the 1 cable connection. Don't have to plug in a stinking DC adapter on the side or some sort of USB interface. So that's cool. Simple packaging.
You can plug that into your NIC card.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, then it's just 2 channels is all it's generating. And so I've got other interfaces around the office that I can use in that regard. But then whatever it is that I'm outputting on that on the preamp that I run this microphone off of, that's what it's going to get, which is, you know, mostly the show and what have you. Like, it's the full audio from the show. So yes, it's PoE. Dark says yes, it's PoE. I love how, like, I'm always like, I don't know if it's, and it's always like, yes. Everybody lets me know. So refreshing might help. I just got to call you out on this. NIC is the network interface card. So when you say NIC card, I cringe. All right. Look, I agree, actually. That is cringeworthy, and I apologize for my mistake. You don't need anything else. It is really plug and play. Yes, true plug and play. I mean, that you don't need anything else to make this thing function other than a switch that's doing PoE. So, fair enough. I do like that it's 2-channel. I think that's pretty slick, that you can get 2 sources out of a single one. Okay, so that makes the steeper price tag a little more palatable. But, yeah, really what I want is...
Well, it's stereo. I think stereo is default. I mean, if somebody sent you a mono one for $200 and it's like, wait, I got it just to do stereo, I need 2 of these?
Right. Or that, well, yeah, and fair enough. You can run it in stereo, but it's also, you could run 2 independent sources out of it because they show up in the controller as independent, independent channels that you can route. So that's pretty cool. It's line level, so no preamp, no gain control. Like super basic, they didn't overcomplicate it, which I kind of like, because I hate it when I get a product that's overcomplicated. That's like, it doesn't need to be, right? It doesn't have to be crazy. So I used to run 2 buses. And whoops. Are there any budget-friendly mic preamps for Dante? Like 2 or 4 mic line inputs.
Depends on what you define as
budget-friendly.
Budget-friendly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, yes, they have a cost, and it's not an unsubstantial cost, but at the same time, there's lots of hardware out there that costs more. but definitely if somebody was like, yeah, we're going to add Dante to our studio and it's going to be like an investment to get that up and running,
Yes.
it's like it's like you like that. What is that? 250. So it's 250 for a single seat of ingest. Oh,
Right.
did you want to hear it at location? Well, now you have 250 for it is stereo output, and
Yes.
just keep going down the line. And it's like, oh, I have a bunch of video decks. 250
Yeah.
is like, so 2, 4, 5, 500, 500, 500, 500, 500, 500, and that's just stereo.
Yeah, and that's just inputs and outputs. That's not even considering like the other things Dante can do, right? Because there's like a whole bunch of devices out there that speak the protocol, like comms units and like receivers and microphones and all sorts of things. Is like, well, what do you want to do with it? Because that's going to dictate how much you're looking at to invest on it. But out of the gate, per left right channel, it's $500, which is that's it. For somebody just getting into it, oh, that's cool. Like audio over IP, $500 for left, right. Okay, well, that may push people out of the realm of wanting to
that's
look
kind
at
of
the
why,
option.
NDI, like when you have the play, and what's the list on the play, or what's the retail on the play?
On the play is 150 right now.
150. So technically, if you can do Dante to NDI, and then so you've got Dante coming in, and now you're sending it out to a TV
Yep.
or even just a stereo speaker for 150. I'm like,
Yeah. Yep. No, that's right. No, and I wonder if that's the pitch, right? Because there are already environments that are like full on Dante, but if you're going to run with them, then it's like, well, then you have to buy the NDI hardware and you have to buy the Dante hardware, and they work together on the same link, like on the same network, but it's still, now you're like compounding prices. But if you could convert it to NDI audio, and then you could like strip that audio out and just use audio sources wherever you're at. Well, now our already Dante enabled environment, which has all these sources in Dante inputs, now we can just convert them over and make them all a part of the production suite as well with the NDI side of things, and just convert them over to NDI signals, which is literally, I think that Dante Bridge is $150 or something like that. And so for $150, you can now change over 8 mono channels or 4 stereo channels or whatever it is, and get
what if you need more bridges? I mean, you want to do multiple devices and get them all on there. Do you need multiple bridges?
Yeah, you would need, in the current state of things, you would just have multiple licenses. So I think you're limited to 8 channels.
But it looks like it's 8 channels because you have to select the device. So even if you just have a stereo device, you don't get to. It's like you don't get to use the rest.
Yeah. So, well, if you select 8 channels, it will, inside the controller, it shows up as 8 channels, and you can, but it's a single output. But then if you're converting, so that's if you're converting into, let me think through here. If you're doing Dante to NDI, it would be 8 Dante channels into a single output. So you could output what you wanted, or you can do stereo pairs, which means that you would be able to do 4 NDI outputs, and you have to label each of them individually. But then you could do 4 NDI outs for basically 4 pairs of Dante in, and the same goes for the other way. So if you wanted to have NDI sources and you wanted them all to be on a single Dante source, you could do that, and you could do.
But in their matrix, you could split that out. I think it's
4. I think it's 4. Yes, exactly. But then in the matrix, you can split that out individually. So it will be interesting to see how it gets implemented in like larger scales. But yeah, you are limited to channels. I did ask that question once, and the answer was more like, well, we had to kind of make a decision as to like how many and how complicated and like at what price, because you increase the channels, and of course, like Audinate's going to want their piece of that pie, and so that price is going to go up. The development price is going to go up. So it's like, where do we see this making sense for most people using Dante networks? It's probably somewhere in the realm of 4 pairs.
Yeah,
going that route.
I mean, that makes sense for like pretty much most uses, I would say. And if somebody's a power user, they're probably full on into Dante anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I like the price range of AVIO, around $200. That's oh, and this one, the cheapest Dante 2-channel preamp is $500, which is Glen Sound AOIP 2M. That is a product I am unfamiliar with. Dante Via, which is something that Jeremy had asked if we were going to start talking about, but I don't have much experience there. So I'm going to have Jake on the show to actually go into the Dante items, because the controller and the other offerings just straight out audinate, because he would know. He just had a meeting today as well, so it was the stars didn't align to have all three of us on here. Via will bridge different apps IOs, but is stereo only. And how many can you do? As many signals as you need to, or is it Via is just one output, or what is that? What's the latency of bridge? That's a great question. That I don't have stats on. I should too, because I know that's coming. For what I'm finding is the Shure, is that what it is? Which has 4 mic inputs, but that's a bit over $600. I need to Google that product if I'm going to get more here. AIN4. And then why would you need Dante Bridge for 150 if you can get DVS for 50? Does DVS do NDI to Dante? Because I think that was really the point, was to convert NDI audio signals over to Dante, and then, but I can look it up. Audinate. Dante Virtual Sound Card. So yeah, there would be a way to do it, I guess, with the most recent offerings of Audio Direct, but you'll be running multiple programs to do the same job as Dante Bridge at that point, I think. So I think where that it's a simplification of people just having a single interface. I mean, you still need controller obviously to route all that out of Dante Bridge, but I think it's more. So no, it doesn't. So yeah, that's the two-way street option that one would help. John is right. I love it when that comes up. Doesn't happen as often as you think it does, too. I have used an open source software called Jack Trip to send all my Dante sources across a WAN to a remote soundboard. Is Bridge a one-time license? Yeah, it is. It's a one-time license for those 4 stereo channels. Cool stuff. Well, we have been at this for 2 hours 20, and you've hung on the whole time, which I'm super surprised, Anthony. During the riveting and other experiments that we've tried, you can see that I've almost threw this entire cup of water. It stopped having floaties, so that's okay. But it's not as good as the last one. Yeah, and some of it stuck to the rim of the cup, so but most of it, I guess, dissolved. I hope so. It's okay. It's not the greatest, but for what's the calorie count on this? For 45 calories and 10 grams of protein, I guess not amazing, but it's not terrible either. Right, but DVS is per device. Oh, I didn't know that. What? It's $50 per. I mean, it's $150 per license, so technically you could have it on multiple machines with the same license as long as it's not being used at the same time. So you could move the license around as you needed to. If you had a single license and it was just, you had a fleet of computers, and this time we're going to use this laptop, and this time we're using this desktop, and we have a studio computer that runs vMix. They all have the same license as long as it's only on one at a time. Then yeah, the license moves around. Whereas if DVS needs per sound card, if that's required $50 per piece, then yeah, that you would run out of our price point pretty fast. Does Bridge also close out if you don't have an internet connection like Comms does? So Bridge does need to check the license with a server, basically. So I think that's the case, that if you disconnected from the network, because it would have no way of checking with the licensing server. So I would say yes, just because that's the worst answer to give. And if we discover it better, then you'll be happy. But if I said no, and then you discovered that the answer really should have been yes, then you'll be upset. So that's the way I'm going to go with it. The lesser of two evils is probably saying, I think it needs to check in when it turns on. And then it runs. I mean, you could leave it on and probably disconnect it from the internet and be fine, but probably does need to check in as per usual. Because then how would you do the multiple licenses across multiple machines? And like you could get away with running multiple instances at the same time because it's not checking in, right? I'd say I was on the edge of my seat, but I was standing. Oh, you're at your standing desk, are you? Are you still working at home, Jeremy? I don't know where you are these days because you've changed companies. I don't know what your workflow looks like. All right, cool. Well, Anthony, I will let you go. I won't make you hang on any longer, but you have done us a giant service by making yourself available for 2 hours and letting us chew up your time. I'm sure you'll send me an invoice for time used.
No invoice. I appreciate you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no.
To hang out
where can people find your reviews? Where's the quickest way on YouTube? What do they type in to look you up? Because he does great stuff and it's good reviews and he talks highly of Bird Dog stuff, which is also super flattering. But yeah, Anthony's done a whole bunch of stuff in the realm for years. And so if streaming media is your, you tell us where we can reach you.
Streamingmedia.com. Where you just type streaming media / Burokas, Burokas. You can put titles up and be right.
Yeah, I should definitely do that. Here, I'll get on that. Yoink. There we go.
And that will I've been writing for them for about 12 years now. So
okay.
There's a body of content there. And then also I have my Tech Thoughts channel on YouTube, and which I think you can pretty much find everything if you go to like my main website, which is ieba.com, IEBA.com. And then there's links to the YouTube channels and other blogs and things like that. But
IEBA.com.
Yep.
All right.
And no, it's been fun.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Look, I appreciate it. That's the one that you wanna go to if you want to find out more about what Anthony's up to.
I'm trying to click on it, but it keeps moving.
Yeah, you can't catch up to it. It's not a hyperlink, unfortunately. Yeah, no, totally. And thank you so much. It's super cool to have other creators and guys in the streaming realm join us, and so we got to do more of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, hey, kudos to you. I mean, I do a live show for the Yellow Live people, and it's a carry to try and manage a single 1 hour show a week.
Yeah.
Let alone you're carrying multiple shows for multiple hours. So
yeah,
man.
It's helpful that there's lots of rabbit holes to go down, so it's easier to keep it going. But even the guys in my office were like, "Your shows are going like multiple hours these days." And you're not like cutting it off. It used to be just like 1 hour, and now it's going into like 2 or 3 hours. And I was like, oh, there's just stuff to talk about. And part of it is like humanizing the people that are kind of working behind the scenes, right? Support is that way, which is my primary motivator. Was like, like we're people, we have families and kids and houses and mortgages and all that. Like we're real people, and letting people have that interactive. I love the StreamYard platform. It's not the best one out there, but I love it because it allows me to have an interactive touch with people's questions and answer them in real time. I actually even had a conversation this week with marketing. They're like, hey, on LinkedIn, it just shows a bunch of questions, but there's no answers. And I was like, yeah, because we answer them in the show. Like they come in and I even show them on the screen and I talk through what it is. So yeah, it looks like a bunch of questions, and people could go to the show in LinkedIn and see some of the content that we're going to cover. And then they could watch portions of the show to see what those answers are. So that's like the whole point, is to generate interest in what's going on. And I've only had a handful of people on, so you're on the short list right now. It's not like we don't do this too much, but we definitely should reach out to you again, especially when we do roundtable with guys in the streaming industry, and and have you come in and contribute again. This has been great.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing a review on the new play for streaming media.
Did yours show up?
Not yet.
When is it? Do you have one on order, or are you waiting on one, or what's the story?
I was told one would be coming to me, but I don't know via how or through who or whatnot.
Okay. Who told you that?
Eamon.
All right. Yeah. Let me.
But
have.
then
I have
again, I understand because he's been otherwise engaged. Not even engaged.
Literally engaged.
The engagement has ended.
Yes, that portion is over, and yes, Eamon has walked the aisle. So
Congratulations
now,
to him.
yeah, married. It's been really exciting news.
Now he's like the rest of us.
Yes. Yep. Locked in, ready to go. Yeah, but he was back in the office like a few days after, and he sent me an email and was like, "Hey, just so he's telling me so." And I was like, "Hey, by the way, aren't you supposed to be like on a beach somewhere? Like, didn't you just get married last weekend? Like, get out of here! Like, why are you hanging around in the office for a week?" But anyways, he I don't know what his plans are, how that all played out. But I had a guy that started here. He got married a few weeks after he started here, and then like came back to work. He got married on like Friday and was back at work on Monday. He was like, "Yeah, we're gonna take a honeymoon in a few weeks, so we're not doing that right away." And I was like, "Boy, this new age, I don't understand it at all." Just I got married. I was on a plane the next day. Like, we're out of here. Let's rock and roll. But yeah, good stuff. So okay, I will follow up with Eamon, and yeah, I'd love to have you review it. I think that'd be great.
All right.
There might be some hanging around, so we might be able to source one for you.
We'll see.
Awesome, man. I'll let you go. Have a great afternoon. I really appreciate it, and we'll chat again soon.
All right. Take care, man. Thank you.
Cheers, man. Bye. All right, folks, and I will just cycle through the chat here and make sure I haven't missed anything of super duper importance. Of course, feel free to reach out to me or the team at help@birddog.tv. We are in that desk all the time. There's also a new Twitter account, which only a handful have dared try, and that account is at help_birddogtv. That opens a ticket inside our support system, but we can interact with you on Twitter. So if you're in the field or you're at an install or whatever, and you just need to fire off a question real quick, just hit us up there. You don't need to formulate a whole email with a subject and all that stuff. Just shoot that off. We'll get it, and one of the agents will be able to respond to you within a reasonable amount of time. We're hoping that it's more of a quicker way of getting that through, but it does go on the list of things that have been requested. It shows up in the system a little bit differently, and so yeah, I'm going to try and figure out how we can manage that. But anyways, there are some cool things on the horizon. We've got some irons in the fire that are not just about Twitter and emails, but I know that some people don't like the whole email structure, or they don't have email with them when they're in the field, and so it might be easier just to use social media and ask a quick question. So Twitter is there. That option is there if you choose. Of course, hit me up at birddogjohn.tv, JON, and subscribe to that channel. We're slowly creeping forward and growing. We passed 150 like 2 weeks ago, so got 150 something subscribers. I think it's like 158, 157, somewhere in there. That's pretty cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate the interest and folks following along. Anything that I do in the support studio that's for public gets posted there, at least, and so that would be a great place. But of course, all the live shows are done out on that channel as well. That's the easiest place to chat with us as well. That you can choose after the fact to watch previous shows, but also to watch, the live chat happening and whatever too. So we have multiple platforms coming together into StreamYard, but YouTube, either my channel or the actual Bird Dog channel, is the place to be. So it'd be great to have you subscribe there if you haven't already, and then you can set up your YouTube notifications. So when I go live, we do the Tuesday, Thursday show on a fairly regular basis, and next week will be the last time this year that we do a Tuesday, Thursday show, and then we're done for the year. So we have a week off. The support department is closed the week after Christmas, which Christmas is on a Sunday. So we're going to be closed that following week. So if you're submitting tickets or tweeting at us or whatever, we're not going to respond. Just heads up. It'll be a week of radio silence. Then we'll be back at it the next week, which is the New Year. We'll all be in on the following Tuesday because New Year's Day is observed on the 2nd. So on Tuesday, we'll be back in. I'll have a show on Tuesday, and we'll giddy up and get back to your questions and welcome in the new year. Now, next Tuesday, I don't have anything specifically planned for next Tuesday, but I might try and see who's around to chat. because there's some things that we should cover before the end of the year. But then on Thursday, I am going to invite as many Bird Dog employees from near and far to join us for that show. And that'll just be kind of a sit down and hang out and chat and answer your questions and talk about 2022 and looking forward to 2023. So hopefully you can at least make plans to join us in a week on the 11th, and we'll be able to hang out and have a good little chat there. So that's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that show. I can't wait to see those guys again. And I've already got a couple of guys that have agreed to join, so that would be a good use of your time and mine. I'm looking forward to seeing them. Thanks always. One thing new to learn. I appreciate that that's how you feel, because sometimes I fumble through things and I don't know if it's worth your time or not. So thanks for having a great attitude about it. That's always good. Just circling back up to the discussion about audio channels, because it's a little annoying with comms when internet isn't up yet and at an event and you have to have it for communications. That's an interesting thing. I wonder if there would be a way. Currently, there's not a way, but there may be something we need to think about. I could talk to engineering about it a little bit, but there's something that we should think about in terms of how do we like, maybe we could authorize a computer, where the computer gets registered instead of the, and like you could only use the license for one machine. So once it's registered, you couldn't use it elsewhere. And that would then, it would register it, and then you would have to be connected to the internet and deactivate it in order to release it. But then it would only accept one machine ID and lock that machine in. But then you could take that machine offline, say, no, I've already registered this one and whatever. And then in order to use that license anywhere else, you would have to then clear the license with the server, which would require, it may be actually possible now that I think it through. So there's an option there. Maybe. Let me think about that, Alex. I'll see what I can do with the engineers. The licensing server thing is a little challenging, but there's always room to talk about doing it better. That's definitely for sure. Twitter, you say? Indeed I do. Later, John. Appreciate it. Hey, man, Jeremy, always a pleasure. We need to have you back on the show too. So, it'd be great to kind of touch base and see what you're up to. I should definitely do a show where it's like, have 3 or 4 guys again from the industry and like sit down and introduce yourselves, but then talk about the things that you're seeing in the field and all that. That would be great. Yeah, having to have it connect to the internet all the time is a really limit on a location production. Yeah, in the States here, usually what I do is I just hotspot my phone and connect to it there and then register and then open it up and shut it down and off I go, Yeah, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button over on YouTube, GoWeb is a great hype man. I really appreciate that. He hangs on into like the middle of the night every show. He's over in India, so all his family's asleep, and he's sitting here watching us chat about things. It would be really great to have that option. All right, yeah. Let me see what I can always submit the feature request. Whether it gets implemented is kind of out of my hands, but we can definitely tell the engineers that there is interest in that. Because I think right now you can actually register the license in multiple machines as long as there's only one instance of it running, I think. But let me talk to the engineers about that, because that's always something we could talk about. Hey, being connected to the internet at all times isn't practical when you're located at a hotel that charges $5,000 for a 3. Oh, this sounds like you've been to NAB. NAB is that way all day long. While we're talking about comms, can we get a comms app from the mobile? That one is probably a much further in the distance request, mostly because you're talking about having an endpoint as an app that shows up in comms. You can like plug headphones into it and use the phone as a device. It's a great idea. It's a great idea. I can definitely add that to the feature request. Absolutely. But I have no idea if they have the bandwidth or the ability to develop an app like that at this time with the comms protocol. Zachary has a great question. What NIC cards do you use? They're not NIC cards, as Jeremy pointed out. They're NICs. NIC card makes him cringe, evidently. It's like NIC card. Anyway, so yeah, the NICs that I use, I have a external Sonnet box. It's a breakaway box that has the ability to have, it has some PCIe Express risers installed into it. It's a great little box, works really well. And the one that I use, let me just look up my order here. Oh, shoot, wrong computer. The one that I use is a dual 10 gig NIC card. Spent, I don't know, $150 on it, I think, at the end of the day. But it allows me to have those 10 gig connections, and then that box is connected via fiber. I'm sorry, that box is connected via USB-C Thunderbolt to my production machine. And so if I go to Amazon Zone, look up this order, and I type in fiber, we're going to find all the fiber medicine for my son. All right, here we go. Fiber optic. That card it is a 10 gig PCIe. What's the brand? 10G Tech. I thought it was. It's a 10G Tech card. I have found that 10G Tech tends to be middle of the road. Like, they're not premium, but they're not bad. Yeah, they're not bad. And so I have this card installed. It's $150. I was right about that. In a Sonnet box, and then that it has 2 actual fiber connections out to the 4250, which is actually, this one is only a 1 gig connection. And so I've got 1 gig connections out of those over, and that gives me a 2 gig pipe into my NDI network. I used to have issues with the NDI signals in vMix stuttering, like dropping frames and whatever. And that's not a problem anymore. So kind of happy about that. Happy that it has seemed to have cleaned up. Now the issue that I have is the CPU bandwidth is a bit restrictive. And I'm just going to turn low bandwidth mode on a couple of these sources. So it's a little, the CPU kind of maxes out a little quick for how many NDI sources I want to use. So if I light up 3 cameras, it basically overloads the CPU, which is currently running on about 87%, which I prefer it to be down in the 65 realm. I'm going to run the playlist here, so you'll see the camera cycle through. The news too, I've changed the 110 position, so it used to be up here in the bird's nest. Now it's up where the P400 was, because if you watched the show the other day, I had a P400 that was started malfunctioning, and that's actually the reason why it's here, is because it was having that error. And so NICards, yeah, says Alex. So the 400 started malfunctioning, so I swapped it out for the P110, which is now up there, brand new camera. And I need to probably position it a little better. But anyways, it's up there, and that is the new kind of scheme. So the next camera you see, I believe, is the 110, and then the following one is the 120, the PF120, which is just here on the side that looks at the color wall. And that's all I got for sources. I've just got those 3 cameras, which is plenty. I don't think I need any more than that at this point. So there's the 110. And yeah, it looks, I think it looks really good. I like it. It's a nice tight shot. My 400 used to be a fair bit further back. Like, I didn't have, I had more of the studio exposed, but I kind of like it. I like that nice, like, it's a tighter shot. It looks pretty good. So good times. Good times. Great oldies. There's already an app with comms and tally over the phone. I forget the name. Yeah, I don't know that name. I don't know that one either. I know NDI HX has like a phone app that you can use to source things over Wi-Fi, but it just makes me nervous. And yeah. But anyways, I've used it briefly. I've used it a couple of times for like just some test scenarios, but those don't run on bird.com. So yeah, he's looking for a bird.com app. I'm not looking for a complete separate comm system. I'm looking for a bit more communication options with the bird.com's platform. Yeah. No, I get that. I think it would be great if we could have just a comms app that adds endpoints, available endpoints. It's literally an NDI signal, and it's not that much either. Like, it really wouldn't be a network hog. The problem with phone is it requires you to have the phone on the network, and most phones are, our protocol right now says don't use Wi-Fi and turn that off. So it would almost need to be like a separate NDI network that was dabbling in the Wi-Fi realm. So it's a bit of a contradiction to what we require. Is the BirdDog headphone discontinued? Yes, it is. It's not discontinued for performance or anything. It's actually the company that made it couldn't source the parts. It was one of those part shortages that happened early on in the pandemic, and it was actually previous to pandemic. But they were just like, it's harder and harder and harder to find parts, so we're not able to make it. And instead of resourcing it and relaunching it and having another one, we were just like, let's just find headphones that work with comms. And so we have a couple in the help desk that we use for testing purposes, and they work pretty well. So, good stuff. All right, well, I have gotten to the end of the chat. I'm really sorry if I missed questions. You guys were moving right along, and I was engaged with talking with Anthony, and so we probably missed some valuable stuff. And, you know, if we want to talk specifically about Dante audio, what's going on here? If we want to talk about Dante and configuring that, we should probably call Jake, because that dude I know has a fairly in-depth Dante network, and he's got lots of sources, and he's doing a lot with it. But right now, I've literally just lit this up today. The cool thing about Dante Controller is it sees the actual Dante device, no problem. So that's pretty neat that's what's going on with that. I am going to turn this back on and just see if it appears in the controller. I don't know what I need to do to the controller to make sure that it's refreshing. I see that there is a refresh button. But anyways, I'll play around with this more, trying to get a little more versed in it before we go too much further. I can turn on the Dante NDI sources and then cycle that, see if it shows up. Nothing yet, but anyways. So yeah, we've got some stuff to play around with, and again, I've got these now interfaces for Dante, so I can get some sources on the actual NDI network and start testing and see how it plays out. See if I can hear sources, bring them in, convert them over to NDI, bring them into the show. That'll all be great, because I can also do that like from my office and send it across the network, which is multiple switch hops at this point. So yeah, that'd be great to give this more of a test and to have more experience with that. So that'd be good. I definitely just need to be better versed in it anyways. So we will do that and go down that road. There was a BirdDog headphone? There was long ago. It's probably been discontinued for 1.5 years at this point. But yeah, they were all black with like green highlights, and they're slick. We actually have a pair here. I'm pretty sure they still work too, but they had a little microphone that you could detach if you wanted, and they had BirdDog logos on them. Yeah, they're rare, so good stuff. HyperX Cloud Stinger works great for comms, especially with the mic flipped up to mute and volume control on. Oh, that's cool. I'm going to check those out. Sounds good. Well, thank you, John. Well, Dark Acid, thanks for coming back. What a treat. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's been a little while since we've seen you, so thanks for hanging out. I'm almost done. My Gatorade, 10 grams of protein, so. I mean, it's okay. It's not great. It's not bad, though. I've had worse. On this show, I've eaten worse. So, yeah, there you go. All right, folks. Well, I am going to get on with getting on, and I've probably got some work I need to do. I know I've got a big... Oh, I may not have that meeting this afternoon, actually. So, maybe not. We'll see. But, yeah, I've got some things that I do need to do, and, we have to get our work done. So, can't just sit here all day talking to you guys, although I would like to. And it gets more blue every time we see it. It's true. So, yeah, I'm going to actually go back to my workflow. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate that. And it's made this 2 hours and 45 minutes go by fairly fast. It's great to have Anthony on the show. Special thanks to him for carving out some time for us. And hopefully... he felt like it was well worth it, but it's always good to talk to guys in the industry. He does have a lot of stuff over on YouTube, so check that out if you don't know much about him. He does great reviews of products. He's done one of, I know, the PF120 and a few other BirdDog things, and he's currently waiting for the BirdDog Play. So I'm going to talk to Eamon and find out if I can just get him one because I might be able to scrounge one up here. But if we can get him over a Bird Dog Play, then he could check that out for us as well. But I need to have him back. I need to put him on the list of guys to reach out to again. And yeah, we will do this again shortly. So all good. Ready for the rest of this week, and hopefully you are too. It's been good. So thanks for your time. You're very welcome, Angus. Thanks for hanging out with us. Pleasure always having you around. I have 6 of the Bird Dog headphones. I love them. There you go. iPhone. You're probably one of the only guys in the world that have that many. Hello from New Zealand. Oh, you guys are waking up over there, are you? What time is it over there? New Zealand. Well, Melbourne, it's 20 to 6 in the morning tomorrow, or in the future. So hey, how's it going, Jamie? Good to see you. Must be a long show, as I've caught the end of the show live. It's true. It is a long show, and they keep getting longer. Oh, we had Anthony Burokas on today, and he's a good friend of Bird Dog, so it's good to have a chat with him. We talked a little bit about, well, really, honestly, we talked a little bit about everything, so it was good. I can imagine Bird Dog Headphones 2.0 with a small screen like the V2-120 and play NDI audio. Hey, you never know with this company. We've got some cool stuff that's come out, and yeah, don't doubt. Hey, what's going on, Balu? It's Blue Badoody Badoodai. That took me a minute. My brain is fried at this point. So PoE headphones. So here's something that I was like, wouldn't it be cool if you had headphones that plugged in via Ethernet, and that's how they were powered, but then you could assign an NDI audio source. Like, this is that NDI audio thing being taken seriously. You could totally put like program audio or like a director's audio, and just so there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential, folks. Good stuff. Everything must have a screen now. NetHab, you and I are blood brothers. I totally agree. Everything needs to have a screen. You can turn it off. Have the option to turn it off, but it definitely needs to have one. For sure. Glensound makes PoE-powered Dante headphone amps. Oh, that's cool. We should follow in their footsteps and make NDI audio headphones, and then you could just route the audio that you want to hear. And then you can have varying... oh, shoot. This is such a good idea. Okay. I need to stop daydreaming about future products and probably go and support the current product line. So thank you so much for hanging out with us, everybody. Hopefully you've had a fun time. If you didn't learn anything, hopefully it was at least enjoyable. And but hopefully you learned something. That would be great too. But as always, look for us next Tuesday at 11, at least for an hour, at 11 o'clock Eastern time here in the U.S., and we will get to hang out and chat a little bit more about whatever is on your brain, on your heart, and in front of you as your problems. We can definitely work through those as long as they're NDI related. I'm no good at the life stuff. So the NDI stuff I might be able to help you with, especially if it's Bird Dog related. But yeah, be sure that you come back on Tuesday at 11 and definitely bookmark. The show is already up. The scheduled show for next Thursday is already up, and that's the Bird Dog Roundtable that I'm going to have with other Bird Dog employees. So be sure that you bookmark that and set a notification so that you know when that one goes live next Thursday at 11. We're going to chat for a little while and get ready to close out the exciting year of 2022 and look forward to 2023. So have a great weekend. Be well. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you in a few days next week. Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.
And then another